Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS Kindred. Contact, nice, cleared orbit.
The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Hail, broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the mossy creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. I'm Joe Roop, and this is Lighting the Void. I want to try something different. I want to try something a little bit different tonight. So we're just going to talk about a couple of things. First and foremost, then we're going to bring on our guest, Andy Thomas. All right, so that's what we're going to try to do tonight. Tonight is Thursday, September the 12th, and like I said, Andy Thomas from thetruthagenda.org will be joining us tonight. A very well-known speaker, an author who speaks on cover-ups of all kinds, from political to crop circles. That's coming up on the broadcast. Don't forget, this show is brought to you by AncientLifeOil.com. Go get the best CBD oil on the planet, the Ferrari of CBD oil. Everybody in my camp should be using CBD oil, and they should be using Ancient Life Oil. It's trusted, the one and only. Also, get the tea.com Life Change Tea, the only detox tea that you need to clean out impurities, from a man, Ronnie McMullen, from the Health Matters Now YouTube channel. Also, as well, you can go check out and subscribe to his YouTube channel. He's doing like daily broadcasts for you out there, and it's fantastic. Fantastic broadcast. It's actually working better than the webinar, and I know he's having fun with it. Also, preparewiththefringe.com. Any order that you go to at preparewiththefringe.com, any order over $100 is free shipping. You get a month's supply of food, or you can get 2 months supply of food plus all of your survival needs. Awesome stuff out there as well. A big shout out to our new supporter, Jared. We really appreciate you and all of you who continue to support us monthly. Jared, I actually, the reason why I'm saying your name is I got an email last night about, I got an idea, Joe, maybe you should say people's names, the people who support you, and say their names. Well, I do. Well, like once a month, I try to do like a roundup and say everybody's names. But, sometimes you'll say somebody's name and they don't want you to, or it's a very tricky situation. So here's what I'll do. I'll just start giving you guys more shout outs instead of just doing it once a month. And if you don't want me to say your name, then just say so. Tell me, don't say my name. And I won't say it. So here's what we're going to do. Since Friday the 13th is coming up, it's been a crazy week, if you guys can't tell, and we're just now, for all of you astrologers out there, kind of easing out of the Mercury retrograde period. God, always seems like we're in Mercury retrograde, doesn't it? But tomorrow night is a very special Friday the 13th. So when we do the call-in show tomorrow night, we're going to talk about everything Friday the 13th, our superstitions, scary stuff, you name it. And then what I think we're going to do, and I got to get with Lady Ann to make sure that this is what's going to happen, is after the broadcast, we're planning on doing like an after party for a special like Friday the 13th type deal. And it's you got to get the software though to do this, but it's really, really cool. So trust me on this, okay? So if you've got a PC, you're probably going to need a PC. I don't know if it works on the phone or not, but it's a software called Cast. Now, it used to be Rabbit, but it's Cast, K-A-S-T. And we're going to start a party in there, so to speak. and it's got the chat rooms and all that stuff with it. And we're going to watch Friday the 13th films, right? So for those of you that can't sleep or that stay up all through the night, that's where we're going to be. We're going to start a public room, and I'll send out all the links in the Fringe FM chat as well as all over social media for the after party. Because tomorrow night is like a full moon, Friday the 13th. It's kind of, I mean, you got to celebrate that kind of stuff, right? That's coming up on Halloween next, and you can't pass up stuff like that. Not here, not for the Fringe FM. And yeah, so it looks like she said that we're going to do that. So yeah, that's our plan. So if you guys want to vote on movies, I don't know what we're going to watch or whatever, but the software is really cool because I've tried this with other stuff like Discord, all these other softwares, and the movies aren't really real time, and it's glitchy and choppy and all that stuff. But the way they have this one set up is pretty cool. It's everybody's watching the movie at the exact same time, real time. It doesn't really chop up unless your internet connection kind of blows out or the person that's hosting it. But I've been using it lately. It works pretty well. So that's our plans for tomorrow night after the broadcast, after open lines, a Friday the 13th after party. Yeah. You can also support the show by donating if you go to the website at lightingthevoid.com. You can go to lightingthevoid.com, reach deep down there where the donate button is, and if you support our work, it is one of those deals where you can just throw us some bones if you want. You can also go to the contact page and leave a review for the show, and I will broadcast it like Jared left one last night, and you're going to hear it. It's just a quick shot. You can leave a quick shot or as much as you want on there. Also, people have been using it to ask questions, which is really cool, although I haven't figured out how to make that a part of the show yet, but I guess I can. So people are using that SpeakPipe link there on the contact page to ask questions too. So little debacle yesterday with UFO Seekers. By the way, you head over to ufoseekers.com, which is backed and supported by the Fringe FM and Lighting the Void. So that's where we go to for all of our UFO stuff. If you want to keep a journalistic approach to it, you just go to @UFO Seekers on Twitter, follow their videos, which season 4 will be coming out, and I can guarantee you the footage is going to be just as good, if not better. I don't have any big insights into that, but I know that's coming. And that channel is at youtube.com/UFO Seekers and ufoseekers.com. And if you've had a sighting and you'd like to report it, give them a call at 661-UFO-7889. So I just wanted to mention this real briefly because I won't beat a dead horse, but when Tim came on the broadcast, we had talked about how he was going to be on the CW. He licensed his footage, the Area 51 stuff. And then you watched the show last night, and it's Ryan Sprague, Corbell, his footage, and no Tim, no mention of UFO Seekers, nothing. That kind of keeps happening to him. And I think it's because I think once people finally realize just how good of a researcher he is, it's over, because it kind of rises above the rest when it comes to UFO investigation, in my opinion. So if you let the guy win at anything, Tim Doyle, then he's gone. He's going to take off. And I think maybe that's what they're afraid of. So they just want to use his hard work and pretend it's theirs or something. But anyways, that's what happened yesterday. So just making you aware of that. So if you guys have watched, or you have watched the Joe Rogan podcast, Dan Aykroyd was on there. I think it was the last show. And once again, Joe Rogan is doing the eye roll thing. I don't know why he keeps asking people on to come on his show if he can't take this field of ufology and aliens seriously. It's almost like, does he bring people on the show just so he can poke at them and make fun of them? Is that what he's trying to do? While he's wearing a Tesla shirt, right? You gotta notice the little subtle nuances and crap that goes on during that show. That is one of those deals where I can't even imagine being Dan Aykroyd, somebody that is well respected in our community, somebody that's backed us all when it comes to UFOs and UFO research, goes on Rogan. I think he only went on for like 2 hours. I think I have not got to finish the broadcast or not. all of it. And I kind of turned it off. I mean, I watched it for a second, and immediately it was like poke the bear, make fun of the alien people lie. And so I'm not going to say anything about that until I watch the full episode of it. So before I get on a rant or roll about that, but just making y'all aware. Yes, Dan Aykroyd. I might watch that after the broadcast tonight. Also, snake-like UFOs that have been reported over the Mojave Desert. I've seen the pictures, the footage of it. But guess what? Guess where I sent it to be evaluated? I sent it to Tim at UFO Seekers. And I know what you guys are thinking. Some of y'all are going to get polar, and some of y'all are going to be like, thank God that Tim's looking at it. Tim does not have an agenda to disprove aliens. He has an agenda to find out what the real UFOs are. And what he has shown us on several occasions is that a lot of these craft literally look like they're coming out of a sci-fi film. So, of course, they're going to be called UFOs, but he's also shown us real UFOs. So whenever I get his information back on that, I'll let you know. I'll definitely let you know about it. Also coming up here in just a minute, I want to talk to you guys about magic and something that I've been concerned about as far as talking about the subject. I think I need to get off my chest. And then at the start of the next hour, our guest should be on. I know it's pretty early in the morning from where he's coming from, but that's going to be at the bottom of the hour here. So a mysterious object from deep space is fizzing towards the solar system, and a bunch of scientists really have no idea what it is, but they're calling it C2019 Q4. Why can't they just call it, like, I don't know, Frank or something? But they got to give it all these different names. But this is like a high-speed projectile that appears to be on a path originating from another star system that will see its first pass in October, and it's going to pass Mars. Now, if you guys remember the cigar-shaped Oumuamua thing, craft, whatever the hell that thing was talked about for quite some time. It came, it left. Nobody knows what it was. It did some weird stuff. I heard it sped up, slowed down, whatever. Don't know. But now we've got another object that they don't really know what it is. They haven't described it. It's coming into our solar system again. So here we go. I imagine that's going to be just like another Oumuamua. There are a couple of people from Harvard that are claiming it could be an alien spacecraft. Of course. That's all it takes, right? Just one guy from Harvard to say, well, it could be an alien spacecraft, I guess. And then there's articles all over the place. We don't know what it is, though. Nobody knows what it is yet. I guess we'll have to wait till October until it gets here, when it goes by our red planet, and see what the hell the thing really is, because I don't know. But I imagine it's going to be another Oumuamua incident. But the biggest story of the day, in my opinion, and it actually happened yesterday, was that 2 Dutchmen were arrested in our country for trying to enter the desert in Nevada. They were trying to enter Area 51 and did so, which everybody knows Area 51 is around 120 miles north of Las Vegas. Now, this was reported from the Nye County Sheriff's Department. It's funny. I don't know how to pronounce their names. It's like Thais Grandier and something else, I think is their name. They got a few miles inside the base from what the report says, but they've been arrested. And God only knows what's happening to them right now. Only God knows what they're doing to those boys, or questioning them about. But I've got a feeling these fellas supposedly run a few YouTube channels. And that's what a lot of these people will do, is run just UFO YouTube channels. Some of them will come out and tell you who they are. Some of them will never tell you who they are. But I feel like that this is kind of like a recon mission. You know what I mean? I mean, what's going on behind the scenes about this Area 51 storm or whatever everybody's talking about? The guy that created the damn thing, he's already tried to quit because he's scared of what's going to happen. But, you know, there's nutbags out there like these 2 fellows that got arrested. And I'm sure they're showing them mass videos of what happens to people. I don't know what's going to happen to them, honestly. I don't want to make light of it if something bad does happen to them, but you know, you're not from this country. I don't know if you're It doesn't say if they're legal citizens or they're just immigrants. I don't know. It just says Dutchman. Got inside the Area 51. I would try to pronounce their names, but I'm not going to. Because of all their YouTube channels. I don't want to give them props for doing that. But it does look like someone's deploying a little bit of recon before the event, wouldn't you say? For those of you that know what recon is, like they're going to go get an inside look so they can get their plan together. If you guys out there, let me just say this. If you're out there and you're really, really thinking about doing this or storming Area 51, it's not going to work. There's one road. We've already had this discussion way into that thing. There's no way. They're going to lock down everything. It's going to be complete chaos. Don't do it. That's all I got to say. And for the rest of you that listen to my show that live in the area, send me pictures, please. We'll be right back. More Lighting the Void coming up. Also, our guest, Andy Thomas from truthagenda.org. Stay with us.
This is Corbin, son of the one and only Joe Roop, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Did you know that qualified patients can access medical cannabis in all 50 states? CannaSense is a medical cannabis collective that helps patients in all 50 states gain access to cannabis medication. CannaSense does this with a streamlined process and strict compliance with the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, the Affordable Care Act, and the U.S. Constitution. It is important for each patient to understand the legalities involved, the costs, and the benefits of cannabis medication. Through truth, legalization, and education, the medical benefits of cannabis will supplant recreational perceptions, and the real vision for change will be realized. Let the people and their personal doctors take control of their medical cannabis decisions before the greed of big business takes over. The tipping point for change is today, and CannaSense is ready to lead the charge and enable legal access for all qualified patients to medical cannabis through its proven system. For more information, go to thefringe.fm/care or click the banner on the website today.
I think by now we can get the information.
I love magic, and on Lighting the Void, each and every week, you will get to hear shows about magic, mysticism, and many other subjects that stretch your mind and imagination. So when I got my mind on the magic and the magic on my mind, I listened to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM. It's magic.
May the gods look with favor upon you.
You're wondering what we're going to do to you, aren't you? I'm getting older and noticing that my body just doesn't work as well as it used to. So I like to keep fit as possible by hitting the gym a few times a week. Recently, I started having a nagging bicep pain, and it got so bad I couldn't even lift the weights. When I was complaining about it to a friend, he told me about Angioprim. He said chelation helps remove toxins, heavy metals, and cholesterol in veins and arteries that may cause blockages. You know, after just 1 week of taking Angioprim, the pain was gone, and now I'm back in the gym full strength. Scientific research proves the active ingredient in Angioprim has superior oral chelation action that helps promote cardiovascular health. So to learn more, go to angioprim.com. That's ANGIOPRIM.com, or talk to a trained consultant. Call Angioprim toll free at 877-882-7221. You'll feel better with more energy. Call 877-882-7221 or go to the website angioprim.com.
Come, walk through the mossy creek and up the hill. Never mind the flashing lights and otherworldly shadows. They stay hidden within the trees. Come, step up to the shack and begin your journey to the answers that you seek. This is Lady Anne, and you are listening to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM.
Okay, here we go. AncientLifeOil.com. AncientLifeOil.com. Now, this is for CBD. AncientLifeOil.com. Again, for CBD. Where do I get CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. It's pretty good stuff. Organic, non-GMO. We are the Ferrari of CBDs. AncientLifeOil.com. You know, they say when you mention a person's name 3 times when you first meet, that you're going to remember. So I'd say to you, nice to meet you, AncientLifeOil.com. It's AncientLifeOil.com, right? Nice to know that you help people. AncientLifeOil.com. Think about this. Occasional stress, occasional anxiety, occasional inflammation, occasional stiffness, and intruders that get you down. AncientLifeOil.com. Okay, so I'm going to give you a fact for the day. So Ancient Life Oil does not help you with business deals. Hold on a second. If you feel better, it could help you make a better decision. Okay, I'm wrong. Just remember to go to AncientLifeOil.com.
What's up, Joe? Hey, man, I just wanted to say your show, dude, keeps getting better and better and better. I love Lighting the Void and the Fringe FM.
All right, everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, me old China plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Lighting the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your northern self and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussels, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you beat a Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
And so for the next, I would say 25 minutes, the phone lines are open. If you've got any questions or anything you want to talk about, it's 1-800-588-0335. Anything, ask me anything, just whatever. I got a little rant I'm going to go on here, but you can definitely interrupt it. And you could also call 501-424-5130. Andy Thomas is our guest tonight from truthagenda.org. He'll be showing up at the top of the hour, and we're going to discuss cover-ups and conspiracies of all kinds in his books and what he's revealed. He's more of a factual kind of guy when it comes to this stuff, and I really, really look forward to talking to him. Also, tomorrow night, it looks like we do have plans for the Friday the 13th after party after the open lines. So we're going to do share your story, ask me anything, superstition, Friday the 13th kind of open line show tomorrow night. And then we're going to have the after party, and you're going to have to, I guess we're just going to throw up the links and invites pretty much everywhere on social media, on everywhere we can. Also the Discord chat. So if you've got a question in there too, you can put that in there for tonight, and I'll definitely answer it. But you need to get a software called Cast, which starts with a K. It's just K-A-S-T, and that's how you get into the after party. It's free, no charge, no cover at the door. I think what you guys should do over there on the Discord side, since all of you are having such a fun time in there right now, is figure out what in the hell we're going to watch tomorrow night. All right? So put it to a vote, like get your top fives or whatever, because if you don't, then I'm just going to pick. All right? So make sure that you do that as well. I wanted to talk about just one concern that I have real quick when it comes to the subject of magic and the occult, which is something that we frequently talk about on the show. And it has to do with what I call dabbling, right? And this has been a major concern of mine. I've brought it up a few times, and I really don't think people understand what I mean by that or how serious it is. Now, I'm not saying, what do I mean by that? Okay, so the way I look at this is, and you can agree or disagree or whatever, but this is my show, so I'm going to tell you what I think. There are certain dangers if you don't know what you're doing when it comes to this stuff. If you just start invoking things or major powers, let's say you just jump straight into high magic, and we'll get into that in a second, like the difference between high and low magic. And there's no difference when it comes to like judgment or anything. It's just what they call it. But if you just start dabbling with invocations of, like, say, watchtowers or certain angels or certain forces, and you've never done it before, then I would say that, yeah, that's a little dangerous. But all you got to do is pick up any Golden Dawn book. David Griffin's book, as far as I'm concerned, is one of the best. So is Liam Thomas Christopher's book. And look at some of the first parts in that. But that's high magic. But when it comes to things like practical magic, which is like low magic, then we discuss things like what is known as, and I'm sure you've heard this before, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And so Maslow's hierarchy of needs it's a theory that, I guess by Abraham Maslow, that kind of puts out there that people are pretty much motivated by 5 basic categories of needs, which are physical needs, safety, love, esteem, and self-esteem and self-actualization. Now, you could do practical magic in my mind. I don't know if you do things like candle burning rituals or using thread or rubbing sticks together or whatever you want to use to do that stuff. And I don't think there is an issue with that. But what I am concerned about is when you get into things like the higher forces and you start invoking or evoking things that you don't really understand just because people talk about it and you think it's cool. That's been my biggest fear out of all this. I'm sure there are several chaos magicians that will disagree with me right now, but I'm only telling you this from my experience. That's it. These forces are real. So let's look at this real quick, just on the low magic side of things, as far as practicality goes. Maslow's hierarchy of needs means that we have 5 categories of needs: physical, safety, love, self-esteem, and self-actualization. Now, also, David Griffin over at Alpha Omega has talked about this extensively. But in this theory, the higher needs in the hierarchy begin to emerge when people feel they have sufficiently satisfied their previous needs. Now, one could look at that and say, are you saying that I should wait to do high magic until I satisfy my previous needs? I don't know. Maybe you could do it at the same time. My biggest thing here is, I'm not trying to tell you what to do or how to do it. My biggest thing here is what I am afraid of. That's all I'm expressing, what my fears are based on my experiences. Okay. Now, there's a bunch of research that doesn't really support Maslow's theory, but that research that he did has impacted a lot of other psychologists, and it's also contributed to the field of psychology. So what are physiological needs, right? Those things like food, water, right? Some of these needs involve things that we would like to do to meet the body's needs, as far as like maintaining consistent levels in our bodies, maintaining good health, maintaining a good body temperature. Now, these things sound stupid, right? But this is like obvious, but it's pretty important before you start, according to these cats, right? Before you start going down the realms of high magic and really opening up like huge forces and stuff. If you think about your physical needs to be the most essential of your needs first, that's probably what you need to realize, because if you go down a road of, let's say, invoking planetary forces, and let's pretend, even if you don't believe this, that the planets do actually have forces that are real, and you start messing around with them, and you don't know what you're doing, and you haven't realized what your needs are physiologically, right? Then some bad things could happen. If someone's extremely hungry, like if you're starving, it's hard to focus on anything. If you're starving, you can't focus on anything. And in high magic, and even in a lot of practical and low magic, you can't do what you need to do without focus. Okay? So this is where people get tripped up. I'm just using that as an example. People get tripped up because they're in a state of desperation. Maybe they are hungry. Maybe they haven't ate. Maybe they have no money. Maybe they're about to get kicked out of their house. And there's also that voice in the back of your head that's telling you magic isn't real. And the other voice that says, well, if it is real, you shouldn't do it. Right? You shouldn't do it. But I disagree when it comes to small things like this or your needs. They're not really small things. I got to be careful the words I use, I think. And so once your physical needs are met, then he talks about how these kind of go in order. Once your physical needs are met, like hunger and health and thirst, stuff like that, then the rest comes from safety. And the next step would be to have a safe environment. Now, we have this feeling since we're children that we need to be in a safe environment. It's where we want to be. If we feel like that we're not in a safe environment, then we will always kind of react in fear or be anxious all the time when those needs aren't met. So Maslow showed us that there are adults that are living in developed nations where safety needs can be more apparent in emergency situations like war and disasters. But it also explains why we tend to prefer things that are familiar to us, or why we like purchasing insurance and putting things in a savings account, because we want to feel safe, right? So the point is what makes you feel safe? What you really need to understand that about yourself, because it's not the same for everybody. Now, here's where it gets really strange to me about this. After that, Maslow talks about love and belonging. This is number 3, not number 1, not number 2, but number 3. The next need in the hierarchy involves feeling loved and accepted. Now, that includes romantic relationships as well, and friends and family. It also includes our needs to feel that we belong to some type of social group, like us void walkers over here. We like belonging. I like belonging to this group. But importantly, I think more importantly, the feeling of love and feeling of love towards others, we need that. But why is that number 3? Well, obviously, if you don't eat or drink, and if you're not safe, you're going to die. So, okay, I get it that it's number 3. You can get into that. You can get into all of that psychological stuff there. But the next one is going to be our self-esteem, or our esteem, how we feel about ourselves. That's the next one. And then the final one after all of that is self-actualization. And this is where you get into things like high magic or dream work, Jungian work, stuff like that. So that refers to a feeling of being fulfilled, or feeling that we are living up to our potential. So self-actualization is important. Now, what I think I see a lot of times, and what a lot of the messages that I get, is people are putting like self-actualization or love before other needs, before the needs of, and I know they are because I'm getting the messages about it. They're at rock bottom. Nobody's really helping them. They feel torn in a lot of ways when it comes to that. Some of them are actually hungry. They don't even have money for food, because they send me messages, well, I listen to the show, but I just barely have enough money for groceries, and so I don't want to, I can't support, but I love your show. So what I'm saying is why are we going down this road of trying to do high magic and invoke I don't know, angels, planetary forces, Sephirotic forces or astrological forces, things that we really should be taking our time with when we haven't even figured out how to feed ourselves yet. And when I say we, I'm just saying like the proverbial we, right? In my opinion, if you use practical magic to do these types of things, I see no problem in it. Get on the internet, look up a candle burning ritual or something. Look up maybe just a spell. I know there's a few places out there that you can go to. I know Leslie McQuaid and David Griffin's got a few that they give away for free. Use that stuff and see how it works. Go to Frederick Xavier's channel. There's a bunch of practical magic stuff out there, and just try it and then let it go. Now, I guess what I'm trying to say is please don't dabble with high magical forces first. If you don't know really what you're doing, like you got to know what you're doing, and you should be balanced right before you do that, because you can hurt yourself. But if you want to do that, in my opinion, that's up to you. What really, 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 really freaks me out more than anything, and this is like my number one thing, is where people do these, and I'm not trying to pick on anybody here, okay? I'm just doing it because I care. So if you think I'm picking on you, please don't think that. But it's where people start messing with these forces and they bring others involved. They'll bring others to, I don't know, their circle or their meditation or whatever they're calling it. And then they invoke all these forces and stuff, and they don't tell the people what they're doing. Everybody that gets involved with magic or any of the stuff that you guys are doing, everyone needs to know exactly what they're getting involved with before it happens. There's going to be hella karma to pay if you don't. And so this is kind of why I'm talking about why I do this alone. And if anybody does it, I don't try to bring other people or get them involved. And in my mind, if you're going to charge money and teach people magical stuff, you need to know what you're doing. And you need to be able to prove that you know what you're doing. I'm not trying to be harsh. I'm not trying to be unreasonable. But it gets a little scary to me. And I feel responsible for it. That's why I'm talking about it. Not because I feel like, you're a bad person or you're making bad judgments or anything like that. It's because I feel responsible for it, because I've always been a little bit taken back, and I've always had this thing in my mind about talking about it to begin with. And now that these things I see are actually happening, I feel like either consciously or subconsciously that I have had something to do with you going out and dabbling with the occult in ways that are going to affect other people and people around you that they might not even be aware of, and yourself. And I care about you. This is heady stuff. It's real. Whether you want to believe it or not, I don't care. It's real. And you should be careful with it. You should go slow. It's kind of like if you've never shot a gun before and you pick up a gun, you're not going to look down the barrel and swing the barrel around and point it wherever you want to, load it, don't know if it's loaded, those kind of things, Maybe I just feel guilty. Maybe that's what it is. Anyways, I'm not saying we're not going to talk about this stuff anymore. I promise you we are. We'll continue to talk about it. But you got to know, like, if you send me a message, or if you tell me that you're doing this stuff or you're about to try something and I don't tell you what you want to hear, remember this broadcast. Remember what I'm talking about now. To be responsible. Please. That's it. I don't really think I've got anything else to go over. Just, again, one more time, tomorrow night, we would love to see you at the show, the call-in line show, the open line show, and then the after party. I just want to see how many people are actually staying up late at night after the show's over to hang out for the Friday the 13th after party on Cast with a K. That's going to be pretty fun. Y'all decide what the movie's going to be in the Fringe FM chat. And a lot of people are wondering how to get to the chat, too. I see everybody lands on the welcome page, but now I'm starting to see more people get in there. That's good. So if you go to thefringe.fm, just click on chat up there, or go to lightingthevoid.com and click on the Discord and the sidebar. You can get right in. That's how you get into that. All right, so what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take our break, and then we're going to get our guest on, Andy Thomas from truthagenda.org. Stay with us.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Get the Tea is the #1 cleansing tea in America. We cleanse you with organic ingredients, and when used daily, you can increase your energy. Cleanse from intruders that set up camp in your colon. Cleanse your colon and feel the difference. Colon cleanses can be uncomfortable. Not Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea is mild yet truly effective. Cleanse your insides every day. Easy to make, easy to use, and feel the results. Are you sold? Okay, then here's how to order. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Look for our specials on the front page. Get the Tea also carries top-rated supplements for those who care about their health naturally. Again, log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com and feel the results. And for those of you that arm yourself with information, come to our webinar every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific time. That's every other Monday at 5 p.m. Pacific. You can sign up at GetTheTea.com.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to The Fringe FM and visit the website thefringe.fm to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on The Fringe FM.
Alex X. Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
OMG! People are jumping on board to the Life Change Tea Regiment. Brew, steep, and drink for a gentle, taste-great cleanse. It's changing how they feel. See what everybody's talking about. Log on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Life Change Tea aids in digestive slowdown and helps people get moving down a healthy path. We won't make claims. We'll just let you decide. Experience is much better than a commercial anyway. If you want results, log on to GetTheTea.com and purchase your super strength cleansing tea. You won't be disappointed. And if you're looking for some mind-body suggestions, go to YouTube and punch in the search bar Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Put power into your health now. So, GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com for super strength tea. And YouTube, Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now for valuable suggestions. GetTheTea.com. The tea that makes you go.
This is Reverend John M. Polk. Please visit me at johnpolkmedia.com and visit my show, Quantum Hologram Matrix, 5 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Eastern, every Tuesday on thefringe.fm.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone app or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
Let's bring on our guest. Andy Thomas is one of the UK's best-known researchers into conspiracies, unexplained mysteries, and cover-ups, and is the author of many books, including the acclaimed The Truth Agenda, Making Sense of Unexplained Mysteries, Global Cover-Ups, and Visions for a New Era, and also Conspiracies, The Facts, the Theories, the Evidence. Both available in several global editions, including in the U.S., and Andy's Guide to the Controversial Crop Circles Vital Signs was nominated for Kindred Spirit Magazine's Best Book Award, and he also writes on history and folklore, and his book, Christmas, A Short History from Solstice to Santa, is published in the U.S. This autumn of 2019, and Andy's books have been widely praised as the finest available overviews of their subjects. He's also given thousands of lectures in Britain and around the world over nearly 3 decades, and he is also the co-host of the renowned Glastonbury Symposium Conference, the biggest and longest-running annual alternative event in the UK. He's made numerous radio and TV appearances over the years, and mainstream spots have included programs for the BBC, NBC, the History Channel, and the National Geographic Channel, and he writes regularly for Nexus Magazine. The website for reference tonight is truthagenda.org. Welcome to the program, Andy. I really appreciate you coming on.
Oh, thank you for inviting me. Hello.
Well, I got to say, you are one of the longer people that I've ever had on the program that studied cover-ups, conspiracies, crop circles, you name it. We just now started delving into conspiracies and cover-ups. We've had 3 or 4 guests on the program, including Alana Freeland and such. And now that I've got somebody that's got, close to 30 years experience in this, what do you think is, in your opinion, the most misunderstood and highly misrepresented conspiracy or cover-up given your study? Would it be crop circles, or would it be something more like mind control or ufology? Which one lets you down the most based on all of your research?
I mean, to be honest with you, I think they're all misrepresented, certainly by the mainstream media. And that's one of the issues, as anybody that's been involved with this kind of world for a while knows, that you're constantly up against denial. And now, currently, maybe we'll talk about this more later, very overt censorship on the online world, especially, of anything considered to be alternative. But I mean, you mentioned crop circles there. That's certainly sort of really one of the areas where I started out. Crop circles and UFOs was what drew me in originally. And no, I know that there's a lot of different opinions about crop circles, and some people just can't believe they're anything other than man-made. In my view, they cannot all be man-made, but even if you think they are, let's represent them correctly. And what I noticed when I started to research stuff like that back in the early 1990s was that the press continually just told lies about crop circles. And some of them seem to be lies they must have known were lies. I mean, like, there have been a couple of years where they've, certainly over here in the UK, run stories saying crop circles are all finished, nobody makes them anymore, it all finished years ago. And yet you only have to check the crop circle reporting websites and you'll find there's been loads of them. So continually you're up against this sort of fiction that the media has put out there. And that's really, in a way, what triggered me to start looking at other things, because you think, well, if they're misrepresenting something as seemingly harmless as crop circles, what else are they misrepresenting? And of course, then you begin to meet other people researching other things, and gradually I got drawn into investigating various other mysteries and conspiracies. But I found over the years that, they're all pretty much misrepresented, if they are represented at all in the mainstream. And that's now one of the problems, is that it's all been sort of shuffled off to the sidelines in the apparent hope that the public will forget that these things were ever there. So, that's sort of the journey that I've been on over the years.
And the crop circles, we've had one show about crop circles, which I would really like to know. Have you had your own experience around crop circles? Like, our last guest was really convinced what he was saying about crop circles, just like you are, that there was definitely more to it, and it was based on an experience that he had as well as knowing the facts about it. Have you had any experiences around crop circles as far as UFOs or formations of them?
Yeah, definitely. Now, I mean, for anybody that's listening here that doesn't know, so there's a lot of theories. I mean, some people believe that these shapes, which have got, more elaborate gradually as the years have gone by, some believe they are made by an outer intelligence, whether it's extraterrestrial or whether it's extra-dimensional. But there are also there's observations you can make which suggest that natural forces also come into play. There's a correlation between where underground water is and where most of them tend to appear. But you've also got, as you say, sightings of strange lights, aerial phenomena, all kinds of strange things which have been seen and indeed filmed in and around them over the years. And I have seen a few things like this. Back in 1993, I was present with a small group of people, and we were out watching some of the fields where crop circles appear. And on one night, we witnessed 3 balls of light. So these balls of light, they've been seen and filmed by many people over the years, about the size of a football. And the ones we saw were kind of a pale green. They were glowing. They would appear suddenly over the field and then have a sort of a move around and then fly off over into the distance. Now, we could not find any easy explanation for them at all. And then the very night after, we were in a slightly different position, and we saw these very strange, what I can only describe as kind of dark block-like shapes sort of flying across the sky, but very quickly. It was more of a flickering, really, than a flying. Very, very bizarre, and it almost felt as if we were seeing something which wasn't quite in this reality. So I'm not able to say for certain what these things were, but I do know from that experience and from speaking to many other people that there is this strange peripheral phenomena around the crop circles that isn't explained just by saying that all of these things are made by men with bits of wood and bits of rope, which is what the media says. We know some are man-made. I mean, there's no question about that. But to say that all of them are man-made doesn't really add up. And when you look at the incredible geometry, some of the biological anomalies in the plants, the many strange things around them, and the fact that they've been going on for centuries, which many people don't realize, it really is not an easy phenomenon just to explain away. And yet people keep trying. But I think that there must be another explanation for at least a good number of them.
Yeah, and that to me, crop circles are a very simple mystery, right? It's easily understood. Okay, yeah, that's a mystery. It's either man-made or it's not, right? And I believe a lot of them are not man-made as well, based on personal experiences and accounts, just like you talk about. Now, that's the first time I'd ever heard of anything that looked like blocks that were flying around. That's fascinating. Very interesting. But the more complex stuff, I think we're overcomplicating things or making things complex sometimes. And what I mean by that is, like right now, if you wanted to start a new podcast and get 1,000 downloads off the jump, you could simply put the word conspiracy in the title, and you're probably going to be at a better start than most. We are drawn to this in a big way when it comes to content. Why do you think that is?
I mean, if you look back into history, you find that the public has never been told the truth about what's going on. Because I know some people think conspiracy theory is a new thing. Well, I mean, it really isn't. I mean, in my book, Conspiracies, I try to trace back.
Uh-oh. Hope we didn't lose him. Sounds like we might have lost him. All right, give me just a second.
Are we still here?
Yeah, there you are. That was weird.
Oh, hello. Yeah, don't know what happened there. It's a conspiracy.
It's all a conspiracy, right? Yeah,
it's all a conspiracy. I will carry on, and we'll hope that we'll keep going here. So, sure. Yeah, I've traced back in the book how far this kind of doubt in authority goes. And I mean, you can go way back. I mean, if you just take the Roman Empire, just as one example, I think most people back then knew they were not being told the truth about what was going on. And a lot of people believed that the leaders, the emperors, were up to no good. and blaming other people, and all the very same traits that we would associate with conspiracy theory today. So, I think that's something that's quite important to say, is that everything that's going on now is not new. But of course, now we've got mass communication. It's been easier anyway so far to exchange ideas about this in a way that it wasn't before the internet. But conspiracy theorizing, if we must call it that, it has been around basically forever because authorities lie. We know they lie, and sometimes it's blindingly obvious that they're lying, and yet still we all kind of pretend that maybe sometimes they tell the truth. Well, they must do sometimes, but there is a need continually to look beyond what we're told. When you look at the evidence for something as set against what we are told to believe, there's often a gulf, clearly, between those two polarities. So that is why we're fascinated by it, because, of course, we want to know what's really going on. But what's happened in the last few months, even, never mind the last few years, is there's been a real fight back from the authorities. And I mean, certainly over here, we're seeing a lot of online material going missing, or the links to them are not being shown. Social media, of course, now won't share information about certain speakers or certain subjects. So we're now seeing a clampdown that is clearly trying to make it harder to find this material. And that is a great concern, and that's something that I've been campaigning about just recently. And indeed, if anybody goes onto my website, truthagenda.org, you'll find a link to a YouTube video there that about a talk that I gave this year about the censorship, which is now coming in. It's very serious, but a lot of people haven't quite realized how quick now this is happening. So we all need to keep this talk about conspiracy going, because it is very clearly something that does matter.
Right, exactly. That was when I was doing my research on you today, that was one of the talks that I watched. Your website's very organized, very, very easy to go through a lot of this stuff. So you did a really good job with it at truthagenda.org. I think one of my biggest questions would be, Andy, is in all your research that you've done, do you feel like that our governments, either on a world level or a state level, have made some type of contact with an outer intelligence, and they've been covering it up? Do you believe that that's a reality?
Well, listen, this is where, of course, we have to go into a little bit of speculation.
Sure.
Number one, we can absolutely say strange things fly around which are not easily explained. Now, I give a lot of lectures, but often to, just very public groups. They're not people necessarily who are into alternative stuff. But therefore, in a way, you get a kind of a more real reflection of what's going on in the world. And I have met so many people, pilots, military and commercial, soldiers, policemen, who have all seen classic UFOs. And they've described them to me. But they all say the same thing, which is, you tend to stay quiet about it. They want to keep their jobs. They don't need the big investigations. So if they see anything like that, they tend, on the whole, not to make a big thing of it. But then you also meet lots of other people, just everyday folk, and these people are not stupid. They know what the difference between an aeroplane is and something which is unusual. And although clearly some things could be explained in other ways, I think there's enough out there to say something strange flies around. Okay, so then you're into the realm of saying, well, could it be extraterrestrial? And certainly when you hear the different stories, whether it be about Roswell or Rendlesham Forest over here in England or whatever, there are so many cases where military personnel have reported seeing, evidence of alien activity. And then you get revelations from people like Paul Hellyer. Now, he used to be, I think, the Canadian defense minister, and he has gone on record as saying that, in his opinion, the US especially is in contact with extraterrestrials. So this was a man who held quite a high-level position. So that's quite a thing for him to say. We've got Colonel Robert Salas of the US Air Force. He has also gone on record. He was present at the Malmstrom nuclear base in 1967 when a strange object was seen flying over the base, and according to various people, the nuclear missiles in the base went offline. It was as if this thing had in some way managed to neutralize, which, of course, is quite an interesting power to have. So you've got all of this and many, many different people who from sort of official positions have said, listen, there is something going on here, where in the end you have to listen to it, because unless it's all some strange double bluff, which of course some people have argued that it is, just to put us off the scent, I think there's too much of it just to write off like that. And I think it's fairly clear we are dealing with, shall we say, intervention from somewhere. And I think at the very least, we've got to be open-minded about it, because the world and indeed the universe is a much bigger and stranger place than any of us know, that's for sure.
Right. Yeah, one of the most fascinating statistical maps I've ever looked at was the progression of technology map, where it kind of stays flat until it gets into the late 1800s, and then it really progresses 90 degrees almost and continues just to rise. I think that's why our intuition tells us that there was some type of intervention. But what I would say about the craft, though, and maybe you can agree or disagree with me on this, is that other researchers, such as Tim Doyle and another fellow named Jack that I've seen, I've noticed that they actually have gotten pulled out some newspaper articles and other things that show that a lot of our craft, like triangle craft and things like that, have indeed been military. I mean, stuff that looks like that it's come out of a sci-fi film, teardrop shaped stuff, you name it. But the orb stuff that you described, I've also seen that is a very real phenomena. These orb-like ships, or whatever you want to call them, some of them have moved so fast that you can only take them with still photography. So I know I'm trying to separate in my mind what is military, what's been covered up, and what is real outer intelligence.
Sure. I mean, there's no question that we are dealing with two slightly different things here. I mean, there must, of course, be military test craft, and absolutely, I'm sure that would explain some of the sightings, but I'm not sure that would necessarily explain all of them. And, of course, unless you're up there inside the craft, you don't know.
Right.
So, therefore, we have to be open-minded. And, of course, that then brings you to the theories, and indeed, various whistleblowers have put ideas forward that what we're seeing are hybrid craft. I mean, again and again, I mean, you go back to the Roswell story, you have tales of the craft being retrieved, there are crashed UFOs, and that the military has basically been then trying to copy the technology that they have found to make modern military technology. So a lot of people feel some of what we're seeing flying around may well be military, but some of it could indeed be based on original extraterrestrial technology, so that we're seeing hybrid technology out there. You've got people, like Bob Lazar, who claims once to have worked at Area 51. People have tried to attack his reputation, but on the other hand, recently he has managed to prove that he did work there, and he is just one person who said that, underneath the hangars there, they've got all kinds of stuff that they're trying to work out how it functions so that they can turn it into their own military stuff. I'm sure this is not just something that's happening in America. I think we could be probably sure this must also be happening in other parts of the world too. So when you mention the trajectory of technology suddenly shooting up, I mean, there'll be a natural sort of tendency for that to happen anyway. However, yes, it may well be that something got discovered which in some way then triggered a new revolution in technology. But of course, they don't want to tell us where they got it from, because then they're going to have to reveal their sources, and then they're going to have to tell us that they are perhaps in contact with something that as yet they don't want to tell us about. But the problem we've always got in this world is, of course, we are speculating, because unless you've been there, unless you've stood next to the craft or seen the alien bodies or whatever it might be, we're always left having to trust a few sources. So this is always the thing that allows us to get attacked from the outside. But it seems to me that being open-minded and trying to assess evidence fairly is a better way forward than just instantly denying it because you don't personally feel it could happen. That doesn't mean anything to me. If you look at the evidence, there are certainly cases to be considered, and I think being open-minded is wiser than just dismissing it as a knee-jerk reaction.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree with you on that too. I think and we've talked about this quite a bit here, how I think people get emotionally involved in one thing or the other, and it kind of throws things off, right? It really does. I've seen the Twitter battles. I've seen everything when it comes to that. And, the real truth agenda, if you do have a truth agenda, like you say, you should be open-minded on one or the other. You got to take people's experiences to heart and say maybe they actually did have this experience, no matter how crazy it seems, because I've had some crazy experiences myself, as I'm sure you have, they're quite unbelievable,
I mean, in my book, The Truth Agenda, how I describe working the truth agenda, if you like, is to basically sort of build stacks. So you've got evidence here, so you've got evidence of this and that, so you build that up. And then you look at the evidence which is perhaps on the opposite side, which might suggest that it's not true, and you put a stack over there. At the end of the day, when you get so many anomalies, when you get so many things that are clearly demanding investigation, that the stack goes above a certain level, that is where you have to start seriously considering it. If that stack doesn't go up very high, then okay, you can speculate, but you have to leave that in the grey box of sort of maybe. But there are certain areas, especially in the whole conspiracy world, where the anomalies which go against the official story are stacked so high you cannot ignore them anymore. And even if you can't get 100% of the truth of what happened, you can certainly show that the truth, as we are being told by the authorities, is not the case. That is not the way to go either. So I think there are high probabilities in some areas that there are strange things going on. And I mean, going back to ETs and UFOs, I think that's how I feel about it. I think there's too much to say that nothing is going on. I mean, even if you just say they are all military, the craft, that doesn't then explain the tales of bodies and people who have had encounters with extraterrestrial creatures. I mean, a couple of years ago, I had the privilege of meeting Travis Walton, who is, of course, a very well-known character in the UFO world.
Yeah.
He, for anybody listening that doesn't know, he claims he was taken on board a spaceship. His colleagues, they were woodsmen, they watched him being taken up. Now, of course, he's been attacked as a liar, and they've all been really through it over the years. But they all stick to the story, and they say what they saw really happened, and I find him very credible. And he's just one of a number of witnesses who have had encounters with these creatures, let's call them that. And whether these exist in physicality or on a level of mind, I think you've still got a real experience there, as indeed people like Professor John Mack discovered when he did investigations at Harvard into people who claimed they'd met aliens. After he put many of these people through hypnotic regression, psychological analysis, or whatever, he discovered that the majority of these people were not fantasists. They were relating something that to them felt real. And a lot of people feel so, on whatever level these experiences are occurring, you have to listen to the symbolism that comes in from these recurring stories and be open. Because just to keep saying, well, that person's mad, it doesn't stack up when you actually look at some of the analysis that's been done on these people, where often they seem completely reasonable, very well balanced. And again, that's where we have to come back to just being prepared to accept something that may not be our experience, but, may be valuable on a wider stage.
Right. Yes. Actually, yes. You hit it on the head if you ask me. I think what another problem that I run into here is the fake news that happens that we just know some of this stuff is fake. I mean, look, when an article comes out, it spreads quickly, and they make sure that they put up the right pictures and they say all the right things. It's just too perfect sometimes. It's easy to tell that it's fake. But more than that, what is your thought on how do you believe that influencers are used? And what I mean by influencers is there's this idea of the shill, right? The person that goes out and talks about things that works for the government. You hear this phrase all the time in conspiracy realms, like a government shill, this or that. The only one that I could really see where that would be truly effective is somebody like a Joe Rogan. And I'm not saying he is a shill, but however, it does seem like every time that subject of aliens is brought up, other than the Bob Lazar story, doesn't take it seriously in a lot of ways. It's almost like he makes a point to bring up a fact of non-belief and how everything could just be lies and people are making it up in their head. For example, Dan Aykroyd was just on there, and I watched the first part of the interview, and it doesn't sound like the same Rogan that he did when he first started, but now he's got millions of viewers. He's obviously an influencer across the world. Do you think that the government or whatever group of section you want to call it is using influencers to their advantage?
I'm sure it must happen. I mean, I'm a little bit sort of cautious about using the word shill too often because, as you probably know, what you find is after a while, especially in the conspiracy world, that if somebody sort of appears to be trying to find a middle ground on something, of course, then they get attacked from both sides. Yes. And both sides will say that person's a shill because they're not agreeing with everything I believe, which is to me a foolish way of seeing the world. Some people are going to have their own opinions and we must accept that. And some people will try to find a middle ground. That doesn't mean they're working for the government, you know.
Right.
But that said, yeah, I think there are some people where you do have to wonder about the agendas. And as you say, Rogan might be, might not be, but he might be an example. Maybe he's just trying to look after his own career. But I mean, if you go into the UFO world again, you then get characters like Nick Pope. Now, Nick Pope claims to have worked for a department in Britain, in the Ministry of Defense, that used to investigate UFOs, and he's, had a lot of coverage from this. But of course, some people are a bit dubious these days because he seems to have become more of a debunker than a believer. And a lot of people think that he sort of sucked in a lot of publicity because he claims to have worked for the government and then appeared to be an authority. But then, as the years went by, he started to turn against all the very things that he seemed at first to be promoting. A lot of people have accused him of being a shill. Now, I've met Nick Pope. He's a very nice man. You find him very pleasant company. Is he telling the truth about what he believes? I just don't know. And that's the problem. So I can't say he's a shill. Maybe he's just changed his view. Maybe he's got a bit old and tired and bored with it all. You know what I mean? But that said, he has been in a position of influence whereby, it would have been nice if he'd have been a bit more open-minded of late. And he's perhaps done some damage to the perception of that whole world. So he, of course, is going to get attacked as being a shill, even if he isn't. So I think anybody in the public domain, that has an opinion, if you change that opinion, of course, you're going to get attacked. But I mean, I don't know whether you have, but it seems to me most people in the conspiracy world, including myself, have at some point or another on some forum been described as a shill just because somebody disagrees with your view. And that, to me, unless you've got absolute evidence for that, it's a silly thing to say. You've got to allow people to have a certain variation of opinion within certain boundaries,
Fantastic. Andy Thomas is our guest. I couldn't agree more with that, to jump one side or be polar about a subject just because someone doesn't believe what you do doesn't make it so. I don't think that's what truth seeking is about at all. Yeah, fabulous. We'll be right back. If you got any questions, you can call in 1-800-588-0335 or drop a line in the Fringe FM chat. We'll be right back.
To Lighting the Void Radio.
Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal, there's a show called Into the Paranormal. I'm Jeremy Scott. Hear me live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern on the Fringe FM.
You're listening to the Fringe FM, and I'm Michael Deacon reminding you can find my show right here on the Fringe FM every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, or by going to michaeldeacon.com. The choice is yours.
Hello, this is Vance Nesbitt. Take the time to expand your mind by listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop right here on the Fringe FM.
Ew, yuck. They're unhealthy and gross. Bugs, I hate bugs. We keep a clean home, but occasionally bugs show up. Well, I found something that is tougher than bugs. Orange Guard. From contact, it kills bugs. Plus, Orange Guard kills hidden bugs and keeps new bugs away for weeks. I know. I use Orange Guard. Plus, all of the ingredients of Orange Guard are on the FDA generally regarded as safe list. Orange Guard may be used around food, humans, and pets. It promotes a healthier planet, and here's a bonus. Orange Guard cleans where it's sprayed. Plus, it comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee. Orange Guard.
You can get Orange Guard at Ace Hardware. And listen, folks, Orange Guard is tougher than bugs, and it's safe to use. Go to orangeguard.com. That's orangeguard.com.
Hey, this check is wrong. I worked a holiday and 7 hours of overtime. Not getting paid correctly is a real pain. It could also hurt our boss if our company provides out-of-compliance checks. That's right. Construction companies doing business with the government can get fined, or officials of the companies can go to jail if the checks aren't right. It's a law. The Davis-Bacon Act has 30 compliance issues for every check, but there is an easy way for construction companies to be in compliance. EMARS offers Compliant Client, a web-based system that finds and corrects all 30 of the possible out-of-compliance check issues. Users of Compliant Client report an 80% savings in time and money. Running a weekly payroll usually takes about 5 minutes. All 15,000 plus clients of EMARS have never had a legal compliance issue. Plus, they sleep better on check day. Contact EMARS at emarsinc.com or call 480-595-0466.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you are interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
If you are interested in occult subjects, psychic abilities, symbols, tarot, witchcraft, magic, or anything similarly related, my book Occult Arcana will provide you with a truly objective overview of these topics and more. Written in anything but modern language, Occult Arcana was compiled to help researchers balance their quest for a better understanding of the meanings of and in such studies. Occult Arcana is available in softcover and digital form from www.thesecretteachings.info. All copies can also be autographed if requested. That's Occult Arcana from www.thesecretteachings.info.
When I'm done running with the wolves after hunting down a half-ton bison, I look forward to a mind-teetering escapade evening on The Fringe FM.
You're listening to Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335.
Andy Thomas is our guest tonight. The website is truthagenda.org. Author, speaker, and researcher. He's got several books out. Also several videos and speeches that you can check out on the website at truthagenda.org. There is something here that I'm not familiar with, and I don't like admitting that I'm not familiar with something, especially when it comes to things like crop circles and anomalies like that. But I'm digging way back, I think back in the 90s, 93 and 94, the Sussex circles. Was this something separate than just regular crop circles? What was that about?
So, I live in the southeast of England, and I'm sort of just below London, that kind of area. And when the crop circles were sort of like very much getting a lot of publicity in the early 1990s, an organization called the Centre for Crop Circle Studies was set up, and it was set up in a series of branches so that there would be networks of researchers across the country. And so I live in a county known as Sussex, which is split into East and West Sussex. And the team that I was working with, and indeed basically still work with, we covered any Sussex crop circles, and we started publishing a little magazine called the Sussex Circular, which soon took off and actually became one of the most read of all the crop circle magazines. It was a little sort of A5 booklet, and it went far and wide. So, no, we were dealing with the same phenomenon. The crop circles, they're not just in Wiltshire and around Stonehenge, which, of course, many people know about those ones, but they're in many other areas of the country as well. And certainly over the years, we've had quite a lot here in Sussex. So we kind of started just looking at our own formations, but in the end, we wound up becoming kind of a national sort of, and sometimes we mailed it out internationally, source on crop circles. And we need to remember this was before the internet took off. And eventually the internet did take off, and then we went online, and it kind of the focus changed, of course. But it was very important back in those days to get information about the crop circles and all the other phenomena that was surrounding it out, because it wasn't so easy to find out about it. And print media was very important back then. Although given the current censorship of the internet, we might yet be going back to print media to keep the stuff going, but that's another story.
Yeah, right. I want to talk to you about that too, but so this is kind of where back in the day when things really kind of kicked off for you. That's pretty cool, actually. I like that. So I'll have to check that out. So this is another thing that you've talked about in one of your speeches too that I got to listen to for a bit, and it's about the kind of new age love and light. Well, I call it love and light syndrome, but I don't do that to judge. I think everybody wants love, and they want positivity, and they want spirituality in their life. But I also think that it's kind of being used against us in a way to keep us blind from what I would call I guess a psychological war at the very least that's going on. What are your thoughts on that?
For sure. Well, I mean, I write about this in the Truth Agenda book, where there are very definitely experiments which show that positive thinking and collective consciousness and all of these things do have a power. I am in no doubt about that whatsoever. And I think it's extremely important. There have been so many experiments which show that focused thoughts, focused intention can actually change the world around us and have certainly an effect on people's health and well-being. So let's establish that. Where I have a little bit of an issue, though, sometimes is when you get some people who believe that all you need to do is to send love and light out to the world and everything will miraculously correct itself. All the dark things, all the bad things will go. Now, that's a lovely idea, and on one level, I understand where they're coming from. But what I've always argued is it's not quite enough to do that. You also have to take practical action too. There's got to be a balance, because yes, you can sit there radiating love and light, but if somebody comes and puts a gun against your head, just sitting sending them love and light might not deal with the situation. Do you know what I mean? Right. You might have to take action too and do it in a kind of Jedi way, sort of where, you're not going into hate, but you've got to do something. You've got to stand up and take action. And we're kind of seeing a little bit of that at the moment, where there is so much censorship of the internet. There is so much of a kind of a downer on it from the mainstream. But some people have said, just keep going and everything will be fine. You don't need to directly address that. Well, I think you do. because all I'm not seeing it going in the direction that, say, some New Age thinkers would want it to. I'm seeing it going the other direction. And I think more direct action is going to be needed. And I don't mean any kind of harsh action, but something more practical to keep this information flowing, to keep the conversations that we all want to be having out there. And just sitting there meditating isn't necessarily going to be the whole answer. There's a place for that. Absolutely there is. But there's also a place for having to get out into the real world and keep these messages flowing. So, yeah, there are some talks that I've given where I have sort of been a little bit critical of just saying that love and light is everything, because, yes, it ultimately probably is on some level of being. But here in this world, with all its three-dimensional needs and strangeness, we sometimes are going to have to, get involved with that too. So it's about balance, and that is something that I do feel, is very important.
Yeah, that's the key word, balance. It's not a word everybody likes to hear, right? Because we all do unbalanced things, especially on social media. But you make it a point in that lecture to talk about, real extreme polarized views. I mean, we are, in a lot of ways, especially in the West, extremely polar about a lot of things. So for as many people that say that we're waking up and consciousness and all this stuff is happening, I see more polarization now, and maybe it's just because I'm aware of it more, but I've noticed how extreme it is. There are not as many people out there trying to balance out, let's just say, a discussion or a debate than they are trying to just push away even further with their points. It gets really bad on social media.
It does. I mean, polarization is one of the problems of our time. And yeah, I say that. It's an old trick, really. Again, if you look back through history, divide and rule has always been a way that people have been controlled. You get them into very polarized camps. And then, of course, they are spending so much time being in opposition to each other. Other people come along in the middle and they use both sides and they get their way. And you almost don't notice what they're doing because you're so focused on attacking the opposition. That's very much happened in the conspiracy world, in the UFO world. We get into these areas where if somebody disagrees with you, like we were saying earlier, you suddenly treat them like the enemy. But then you stop listening to reason. And that's not helpful. All the time that we are focused on just being in direct opposition to something, I think you can sometimes lose the middle ground that is very crucial to take us forward. And yeah, absolutely, you're right. I mean, if you look around you politically in the world, and we're not going to say too much about this here, but right now, everybody's very polarized. I mean, here in Britain at the moment, we're more polarized than we've been in many, many years. People who want to leave the EU, people that want to stay. Parliament is divided. It's not nice. And it's creating an atmosphere where actually what's happening is people are effectively, they're not moving forward positively. They're effectively now more easy to control because everybody is at each other's throats. And that's not allowing any kind of sensible middle ground again. So yeah, polarization is an issue, but that also happens in the spiritual world as well. You've got the polarization of those that want everything to be love and light and believe that you should never address anything that's dark, because if you do that, they will say, well, you're tapping into the negative energy. And I don't really see it like that. To me, you're not tapping into the negative energy. You're just acknowledging a reality. And hopefully, if you do it right, you're shining a light into that shadow. Just to pretend that the shadow of the world is not there isn't helpful. Because what tends to happen is by just pretending it's not there, everything that's going on in those shadows is allowed to get worse and it never gets properly addressed. And, the analogy that I use in the Truth Agenda book is, if you're running towards a wall with a blindfold on, right, it doesn't matter whether you see it or not, you're still going to hit that wall. It's far better to take the blindfold off and actually see the reality of what you're heading towards so that maybe you can run in a different direction. So, just pretending bad things, aren't going on isn't a solution. even while you're giving out love and light, that is good, that is correct, but we have to, again, find some middle way here. Otherwise, we do wind up polarized, and other people use and abuse it. And I mean, if I just take the conspiracy world, especially things like, 9/11 research into what really happened there, people got very polarized. And what it did in the end was, I think, destroy the effectiveness of that campaign, because people from the outside just saw infighting, and they saw a lot of varying views that couldn't ever seem to come together and agree that one thing was clear, which was that the official story couldn't be true. And that's the strength of that. And I know it's a very controversial area, but it's clear we've not been told the truth. But the infighting, in a way, distracted from that and diluted the effectiveness that it could have had. And I think that was a great shame. And you could say that about many areas, including UFO research and crop circle research as well.
Right. Yeah. Polarization is it's a big problem for sure. And now it's like, you brought up censorship earlier. Where I've seen it more, the one thing that's caused the biggest effects when it comes to censorship is, and I could be wrong, but it's definitely been YouTube. Google did something. I don't know if they changed their algorithm. I don't know exactly what happened. I know their story is they changed their algorithm to support their advertisers more, but I don't see how that could be true, because everybody was doing just fine. But now it seems that since the Alex Jones cases, that everything that has to do with ufology, conspiracy, even spirituality and metaphysics has been pushed down in their algorithm so far, and that all of the other social media people followed suit. And, like I brought up UFO Seekers earlier, the only certified YouTube channel with UFO in the name, when you search it for channels, it's been pushed way, way down. And everyone's talking about that. I've even had publishers tell me that book sales are down. So they kind of know the cause and effect of censorship, just how big it is. And I think that's why I believe something's going on when it comes to metaphysics and consciousness, because we're all learning this and they're pushing it away, if that makes any sense.
It does make sense. I do recommend, if anybody is concerned about this, have a look at my website, truthagenda.org. Go to the videos page, and it will take you straight in there to my YouTube presentation about this. And I gave the presentation this summer because it is such a crucial topic. But I actually list the actual decisions that YouTube has actually announced. So this isn't a kind of a paranoia exercise. Absolutely, you are right. YouTube has said it is taking away from the recommendations that you see down the sides a lot of the conspiracy material. But when they say conspiracy, they also mean alternative views on, as you say, UFOs, alternative health and medicine. It's being taken away or pushed down the search engine so far that unless you know the exact URL, the exact web address, you might never find it. And this is happening on Google as well. If you search for certain alternative subjects now, whereas it used to come up on the first page, maybe you're down on page 10 now for some of this stuff, whereas all the mainstream, all the anodyne stuff that's trying to tell you that stuff isn't real, that's been pushed to the fore. There is no question that this is happening, and YouTube has actually made announcements saying that they are. Because what happened when the whole fake news phenomenon came out, and that's before President Trump put his own kind of description of what fake news meant, but the way that the mainstream media see it, the fake news is the alternative stuff. Our stuff, the conspiracy world, the alternative world, they're just branding it all fake news, and they're enabling themselves, therefore, to try to take that away from the public by saying this is for your good, because they don't want you to be misled into all these silly things. But it's wrong. It is censorship. It's now creating a very false view of the world. So yeah, you can look up a certain subject now, but you'll find more things recommended on YouTube that debunk it than you will things that believe in it. And that is not free speech. That is not a world of freedom where we can express. And I'm very sure it goes against the American Constitution. We don't have quite the same thing over here, but it certainly goes against the spirit of free speech. And people like George Orwell, they wrote about this back in the 1940s, seeing the way this could go if people didn't stand up for freedom. But it seems that we haven't learned the lessons. And absolutely, the online world now is becoming anodyne, it's becoming controlled, and it seems to be that the hope is that generations will eventually come up that will never have seen this material, and that they won't be interested in it. They won't want to hear about it, because that will all be seen as dark and dangerous and fake. And the hope is that they will then stop seeking it out. And it's worrying. And we have to stand against this and make sure that this information keeps getting out there. But, do have a look at the presentation, anybody that's listening, because it is so crucial. And, I mean, if you want to search for it directly on YouTube, I mean, just go to it, because it's actually called Censored. Andy Thomas Censored. That's what the talk's called. Truth and Free Speech in an Age of Mass Censorship, which I think kind of says it all. But the more people that can speak about this, the more chance we'll have of keeping these kinds of conversations flowing, because we need to. And from that point of view, you know, I'm always grateful that shows like yours are here, because the more people that can keep getting this stuff out there, the better. But yes, because of the big court cases around Alex Jones, and over here in Britain we got a guy called Tommy Robinson, and yeah, sure, they're controversial figures. But I believe that people should at least be allowed to hear what people are saying. But what's happening is they've used them to try and take it away and take everything else away as well, which I don't think is a wise course at all.
Yeah, and every time I've brought that up, what people will say to counter that is, well, these are, no matter how big they are, these are privately owned companies. They can make whatever decisions they want. And, you know, I say to that, yes, but there should be an ethical decision to make. It's kind of like we were supposed to set up an economy where monopolies couldn't happen. That's supposed to be a regulated thing, so where there actually can be a market. But it seems like social media has kind of, it doesn't seem like that's happening. So it feels, and it really is, what Crow 777 is called, like a modern day book burning. So when someone says to you, well, they're private companies, they can do what they want, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, yes, they can do what they want, of course. They're big enough. We can't tell them what to do. But I think you cannot help feeling that they have been under pressure. I mean, certainly, you know, once Facebook got accused of allowing things on there which some people felt, and sometimes they were dangerous and wrong, of course, then, you know, Facebook started to run scared. And, you know, a lot of these companies all own the same things anyway, and YouTube. On one level, because, of course, now these companies have been told that you are not just a platform for other people's stuff, but if you allow this out that you are a publisher, that then makes them legally responsible for the material that's been put on there. Because what for years these companies have said was, look, if somebody abuses our system to put something on there, we will try and take it down, but we are not directly responsible. But what governments around the world have been saying in the last year or two is, no, you are responsible. And so, of course, suddenly they're terrified of being sued. And then advertisers say, well, we don't want to be associated with this kind of material. And so what they do is they try to push anything that might be even slightly controversial away from them, because they don't want that taint. And then, of course, the upshot is that what's happening now begins to happen, where we start to lose everything. Perfectly legitimate alternative inquiry is then removed in the name of them protecting themselves. So, yes, there probably is a conspiracy element. I think governments have definitely put pressure on them, and we know some big companies do work in conjunction with governments. I mean, I think that's true. But also, I think they're running scared. They don't want to be sued. They don't want to lose whatever it is that's given them all this power so far. However, I think they've gone too far, and I think they're going to undermine themselves because, as you say, everything was working just fine. We would use these companies now. People are trying to set up their own platforms that are not run by these big companies. Now, you're up against it there because obviously to get to that scale that they used to be on that's not going to be an easy task. But now we're being forced into that and forced back to things like print media to try and keep this stuff going. I don't think that you can just push this all under the carpet and hope that it will all go away, which is what they seem to be doing. I don't think it will, and I think the danger is the less you allow people to talk about this stuff very publicly, the more extremist elements you're going to get who are going to try to get that truth exposed in more and more direct ways, which sometimes do fall into dangerous zones. So it becomes then a vicious circle because then they can say, and this is what they are doing, well, there you go, you see, anybody that believes in all this truth stuff, they're all right-wing fanatics. And then they don't want you to have a voice at all. So this is the problem. And again, polarization. And they're using that polarization to shut down the freedom of the internet. There is still time to do something about this, but we do all need to be very, very aware that it is happening because it very definitely is.
Well, what can we do about it? Because it does feel helpless to me. I mean, do we try to pass a bill when it comes to stuff like this and use the government system, or are our voices not loud enough already about it? It does feel kind of helpless sometimes. It feels kind of, I don't want to get doom and gloomy, but it feels like there's nothing we can do sometimes. I mean, when you see Zuckerberg in a courtroom, it looks like he's on trial for his life, and he's the one controlling a lot of stuff. I don't know. I mean, what do you think we could do about it at all?
So in the presentation, I make the point that we need to find a new strategy here. And, one of the things is to perhaps accept, okay, what is happening is happening. We've lost this battle for now, but we haven't lost the war. And I think one of the things that we can do is, as I've already mentioned here, is keep this information alive. Now, it might be that we have to accept that for the minute, right, we do not any longer have a mainstream that wants to show this information. Okay, but that doesn't mean the information has to die. We have to keep it alive in whatever pockets of the internet we can, but also beyond. We have to keep it alive in conversation. We need to keep sharing this with people. And I know some people that work in alternative fields, they find it hard to try and talk to other people outside of those worlds about it because, of course, then they face ridicule. Then, maybe they're going to get attacked as being the dangerous people that governments, want people to think that we are. But you have to keep going beyond that. You need to be very reasonable, I think, in the way that you try and share this information. We should never shake our fist at people and tell anybody that they must believe it, but we say, look, this is another truth, and I offer this just for your consideration. That can make a difference because the more people that keep talking about it, the more they're going to realize, well, hang on a minute, why is this not being reflected in all these mainstream platforms? And I think a time might come when people will think, well, this is no longer a reflection of the real world that we're in. We must lobby our politicians. I don't think we should just give up. However hard it might be, I think letters do need to be written. People need to email these people and tell them, look, what's going on is wrong. This is censorship. I think you mustn't give up. So we've got to keep doing that as well. But in the meantime, we need to seek out alternative platforms. We've got to find a way to keep this going, however it may be, so that when the wheel turns and eventually people do turn against the new censorship, which I believe they will, this information will be there waiting and it won't have been lost. Because at the moment, the feeling I get is the hope that, as I mentioned earlier on, that this will all crumble away and people will forget that all this kind of information that we like to talk about was there. And that mustn't happen. It's got to be preserved for the future so that when we come out of this new dark age, it'll be there to be rediscovered and reassessed, which I do believe it will be. So, you have to have enough optimism to keep going. I mean, otherwise the mysterious they, have won.
Yeah, we lose.
We don't want that to happen. So we mustn't give in. We mustn't, we lose, and we mustn't allow that to happen. So, it's always worth keeping some optimism and doing just what you can. Even if each person does one thing to keep this stuff out there, it is something, and that will accumulate in the end.
I totally agree. Keep fighting the good fight. And it's not like we and the alternate news or whatever you want to call us, conspiracy, cover-up, ufology, we've been in this position before and have battled our way out of it, and we can do it again. Listen, you can also support the show by going to the shop at lightingthevoid.com. Grab a T-shirt or something. Send us a picture with your mug and your fabulous shirt. Our guest tonight, Andy Thomas, truthagenda.org is the website. Be right back.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling, the ground shook, you could hear rushing water, and then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails, stores with their shelves strip bare, ATMs can't operate, deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand three truths. FEMA is broke, the system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in one business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
The truth is out there.
There's something out here.
And so are we. KTOK Digital Broadcasting, The Fringe FM.
Do you want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of The Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
Hey, Google. I would like to become more intelligent about the unknown world around us, but I don't have time to read or go to school because I work all the time. What do you recommend?
Try listening to Lighting the Void. It's the best way to become more intelligent about the unknown world around us. Besides, I happen to think Joe Roop is the most handsome voice in radio. Listen Monday through Friday 9 p.m. till midnight Pacific time on the Fringe FM. Plus, you will hear a bonus feature called The Stranger Than Fiction News, reported by Vance Nesbitt, news anchor and sorcerer. With all this information in one location, you are guaranteed to be more attractive to others in your social circle because you'll beam with intellectual wisdom.
I think I'll try that.
Every Saturday at midnight here on the Fringe FM. You can join me, Stephen Canby, the host of the Midnight Hour Show. On my show, we explore paranormal topics with a skeptical view. We search for evidence. We search for proof. We search for the truth. Because who better than me, my friends, a magician, a man trained in the art of deception and misdirection? Who better than me to investigate for you some of the greatest mysteries on planet Earth? And I hope you will join me every Saturday night here on the Fringe FM at midnight Eastern Standard Time for the Midnight Hour Show, 9 p.m. Pacific. I want you to join me here every Saturday night at midnight for an incredible journey. Consider yourself invited. Brand new episodes of the Midnight Hour Show, available exclusively every Saturday night here on the Fringe FM. Consider yourself invited.
Join us
This is all. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing his journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much for a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
Fabulous guest tonight, Andy Thomas, thetruthagenda.org. Look, you guys know the show's here for you 5 nights a week. Don't forget, tomorrow night is our Friday the 13th open line special. We're going to be doing an after party on Cast. So if you stay around after the show, we're going to be watching, I guess, scary movies and stuff too as well. So that's going to be fun. But tonight our guest is Andy Thomas from thetruthagenda.org. It's been a great conversation so far, and I really relate to what you're saying on a lot of levels, but what I would say too, because I think you've got a lot more experience on me when it comes to the research, and especially when it comes to age and wisdom. Based on what I've researched and studied, I think a lot of things changed when all this changed, when it really got bad for us, when the tides turned, when it comes to cover-ups, conspiracies, and whatnot. I think it was that whatever caused the Kennedy assassination, I could be wrong, but I really feel like that when that shot rang out, everything changed for us. What are your thoughts on that as well?
I think there is a truth to that. Now, I mean, obviously, assassinations and claims of conspiracy around them, I mean, they go back a long way. I mean, it didn't begin with Kennedy, but yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are different views, of course, on Kennedy. Some saw him as a savior, a new kind of president that was standing effectively against the New World Order. Others saw him as a man that was making the wrong decisions and should be taken out. As ever, polarization. But one thing's for sure, that is not how you're meant to get rid of a president. And it's something which certainly has created ripples that have never ended. And I think there's a number of things. Number one, I mean, just the death of Kennedy in itself was the shock, but also then the uncertainty around what had happened. I mean, the fact that here we are more than 50 years later and we're still discussing what might have happened, because it's still a classic conspiracy theory, tells you that, this is something which stirred up something in the collective. So you had that. And then, of course, it began to sow a seam of concern that maybe anybody that tried to act differently might get taken out. Right. And then when Robert Kennedy went down in 1968 and then Martin Luther King went down and so on, it starts to look like anybody that sticks their head above the parapet and tries to make a difference isn't going to last. So that's going to, of course, create an air of paranoia. And then I think after Watergate in the early 70s, I mean, that was another big turning point, because I think up to that point, I think people had largely trusted in a president or thought their leaders, surely wouldn't do anything that would be dubious. Now, I know these days we kind of assume that a lot of it's dubious, but I think back then that was a shock. And I think that is why you then see certain conspiracy theories arising around that time. You had the Kennedys and then all of this, and it builds up. And then after Watergate, there's a feeling of, well, why should we trust, therefore, anything that the authorities tell us? And that's when famous conspiracy theories like the moon landing hoax theories and all of this, they start to bubble up because people feel that they're not being told the whole truth, which almost certainly they're not. But then, of course, they start to question absolutely everything, and it's very much gone from there. So I think you're right. I think the Kennedy thing was a turning point, but you can see an accumulation of events building up as the years go by, and to the point where then when you get 9/11, which on the surface looked clear-cut, actually almost immediately you had an awful lot of people questioning the official story. And so now we live in a world today where as soon as an official story is going out there, a lot of people assume that it can't be true. But that is another reason why I think now the authorities are fighting back and trying to take the alternative opinions away from the mainstream. So I think they have finally themselves also recognized that, we now live in a world of doubt. But I'm afraid, by and large, they've only got themselves to blame because they are not straight with us. So this is the vicious circle that we're in.
Yeah, it was the research I'd done was a lot of his speeches, honestly, and just listening to him talk, which he was magnificent at speaking. I mean, I don't know anybody, maybe Obama was even close to speaking the way he did, but I could tell it's almost like feels like to me that the last honest president that really wanted what was best for this country. I'm not saying none of the other presidents did. It was just easy to tell in my mind. That's what he wanted. And, his speech about secrecy and that there were people that were doing things behind the scenes that used all kinds of different methods. I mean, he didn't speak about it as if it was a question. He spoke about it as if it was 100% true, and then he's dead, right? So, I mean, that should be what we call evidence. In my mind, that's evidence. You can call it a dark cabal, whatever you want to call it. Somebody stopped him from speaking anymore.
Yeah, I mean, Kennedy did, as you say, he spoke out against secret societies and things like that. I mean, there's some other interesting things that tend to get forgotten, though, because shortly before he was killed, he also had made a proposal that the US and the Soviets in Russia should work together on a space program, and that also various UFO documents ought to be declassified so that the Russians and the Americans could work together to work out what was going on. Now, that obviously in a Cold War time seemed not to go down very well in some areas. So, that's been another thing that's been put into the mix over the years, is that people felt that he was just too radical to do that, too ahead of his time. Say that, we all know that you can name any president and there will be a difference of opinion about who they were. But I think certainly he was not playing the game that had been set down for him. And by doing so, I think, clearly put himself in a dangerous position. And people were probably queuing up to get rid of him by the end. And we should all have learned a lesson from that. But we seem to have learned the wrong lesson, which is now, politicians, when they get to certain positions, they stop challenging and they tend to then sort of follow very narrow bands of predictability, maybe because they dare not try and change things too much, which is not necessarily a good thing, of course.
Right. Now, speaking of that, though, I got to get into the moon, obviously, since you study cover-ups and conspiracies, right? With Kubrick and what he came out and said that he actually did film fake footage and stuff. I'm sure you've seen that interview and heard it. There's been countless talks about it, from Joe Rogan to every chat room online. Now, this is something that people are extremely polar about, too, that I don't think that we're ever going to get to the bottom of. But now the space race is back, supposedly, and there's private people involved, like SpaceX and whatnot. It feels to me like this has been an agenda all along, to keep everything to not work together, like you say, as a world, as nation to nation, to figure this out. I don't understand and never will understand why we feel that we have to be the first country to do something when it comes to things like space. I mean, we're, like Carl Sagan said, we're fleas on a pebble out here. You know, shouldn't we be working together with other nations to do these types of things? And I know people aren't going to like it when I say that, but you know, what are your thoughts on that when it comes to the moon and the Space Force and the space race?
I mean, one thing that's quite interesting about the original alleged space race is that some people feel that that actually was a sham to a degree. I mean, we need to remember that at the end of World War II, Operation Paperclip and various ventures like that basically moved in on the Nazi scientists and divided them up, and some came to America, some came to Russia, and they were then sort of put onto various, technology sort of, ways forward, like with rocketry and especially, of course, space travel. But what that means was that you essentially had allies of each other working in America and in Russia. And we're all sort of told they were all working against each other in a grand rivalry. But one idea today is that actually, secretly, they both sort of wanted each other to do quite well because they were all originally colleagues who'd worked together. And that there was a certain amount of pretense when it came to the space race. I mean, when you look at the lunar hoax theories, it's very interesting. Now, some people get very upset. They see it as anti-patriotic, and they don't want to hear that maybe the moon missions didn't happen as they were told. However, some people will say, well, if they'd have done any fakery at all with the moon missions, surely the Russians would have tried to have exposed them. But of course, actually, they probably wouldn't have done, because again, some of these people would have originally have been colleagues, even though they're now in different countries. And it's very clear that Russia almost certainly did not tell the truth about some of their missions. It does look very like, for instance, the first man into space was not Yuri Gagarin. Possibly he was the first man into space that survived, because there is evidence of earlier Russian rockets where men did not survive, and they have covered up knowledge of that. So, of course, if they're going to start pointing the finger about what NASA's up to, then they're going to get exposed too. So, in fact, they probably decided not to expose each other. So the space race, well, there's a kind of a new race now, which I think is corporate as much as anything. And now we've got countries like India trying to go to the moon, and China, and all of this. But yeah, I mean, I think we have to be a little bit careful as to whether we believe in the original space race anyway. But when it comes to the moon landings, I mean, look, what you can say very clearly is this, right? Whether we went to the moon or didn't go to the moon, what you can say is that some of those images are very unreliable. And we've got orbital shots showing dots on the moon and trails which we're told are the moon landing sites. Well, maybe they are, but that doesn't necessarily mean that the pictures taken on the surface are genuine. The lighting is very questionable in a lot of them. There are inconsistencies. There are angles that make no sense. If they were taken with a camera strapped to a chest, the horizons are in the wrong position. You've got seemingly bits of scenery that seem to move around in the back in completely mutually exclusive shots. So it looks like at least some of those shots are not real. Now, why? Now, does that mean we didn't go at all? Or does it mean what they found was not showable? Or could they just not make the pictures come out in a very high radiation environment? Maybe they weren't able to come back with all the pictures they wanted, and they had to show the world something, So there's a lot of variations as to what might have gone on there. But again, unfortunately, it is pretty clear that they have not been straight. And there's many unanswered questions about it, which perhaps we have to face. But I know some people, they don't want to hear it and feel very threatened. But sadly, most things in history have never been told straight to the public. And I think it's reasonable to assume that the moon landings haven't been told to us straight either, and that's why these theories are never going to go away until they come completely clean.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was the Kubrick interview that got me, but it did make me think, we do get polar-minded with our answers, too. It's either real or it's not, but we don't ever consider the fact maybe it was a failed mission. Or like you say, that maybe they did see something, right, that they couldn't report, and so they showed us what they wanted us to see. I've seen, there was a video the other day, it was like last week, I believe. I don't know if it was Buzz Aldrin or one of the astronauts that actually punched a guy, like a paparazzi guy, in the face because he just kept trying to shove his theories in the face, and the man was trying to eat lunch, and he ended up having to attack him. So people are very, very emotional about this subject. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, I mean, that was Buzz Aldrin, yes. I mean, there was a chap that was trying to get him, I think, to swear on the Bible that he had been to the moon. I mean, you can imagine that might be a bit irritating.
Yeah.
Or was it over defensiveness? But yeah, there's been a number of astronauts. The late Edgar Mitchell was one who said that they saw evidence of UFO activity on various missions as well as the moon missions. So yeah, I think there's stuff out there which certainly they didn't want to talk about. How that ties into why some of these pictures are pretty evidently fake, I don't know. Are some of the pictures real and some of them fake, or are they all fake? This is the problem. Until the day a completely independent mission goes to the moon and they land next to those sites and we see everything in exactly the state and exactly the lighting conditions that we see in those original pictures, I think, as you say, we are just not going to know for sure. But it's interesting in all the 50th anniversary celebrations of the Apollo landings, how often the mainstream kept having to mention the conspiracy theory, if only to debunk it. But my feeling is in 10 years' time, when we come to the next anniversary, they probably won't mention it. And the feeling I got was they were trying to crush it once and for all. And there was a lot of retconning in all the kind of anniversary celebrations, a lot of new CGI, a lot of sort of not imagined scenes going on with the astronauts that I think a lot of younger people today watching that might not have known which was real and which wasn't. So it was almost in a way to kind of relaunch the moon missions with full Hollywood productions for a new generation. But for those that do understand, what the anomalies are around it, the questions, they're not going to go away yet.
Now, with that in mind, I really want to know what your thoughts are on the idea of, well, I don't want to say so much flat earth, but not flat earth, but things that seem just ridiculous, and they do to me too, but I can't really prove otherwise. There are a lot of people out there that are talking about how the whole of space isn't real, like it's all an illusion. There's people that have talked about they saw grid lines above them, other people that have said that that there's nothing in the sky, the moon's not there. There's Crow 777 did a shoot the moon that had some pretty interesting footage on it, but seems like there's this agenda to push the fact that everything that we see when we look up at night and look at the stars isn't real. That's just what they want us to see. Have you looked into this at all, or do you just kind of go and push that to the side a little bit?
It's difficult because, I mean, one of the things that I've always said over the years is to be open-minded. I mean, what I've always said is if somebody's got reasonable evidence for something, I will hear it. I will hear that evidence out. I'm not going to shout them down or laugh at them. I want to understand continually why people believe in the things that they do. So that's always been very important in my writings and in my lectures. I'm not here to make fun of anybody. However, there has to be, it's coming back to the truth agenda thing, the stacks. For me, there has to be a stack that goes above a certain level. I mean, if you take flat Earth, personally, so far, the stack doesn't come high enough. I understand some of the anomalies people point out about, official science and, why maybe they question that the Earth is spherical. I'm not sure personally yet that the things that they're pointing out, which seem to them are anomalies, cannot be explained by other things. Okay. And yes, I've heard the theory that the whole sky is a holographic projection and whatnot. I think the issue that I have with that is that, okay, well, that then comes down to whether you believe reality, any of it, is real. I mean, have we all been living in the Matrix for thousands of years? Some people believe the entire universe is not real, but just a projection. I suppose in the end, though, what you come down to is, well, okay, what if it is? You have to just get on with it, don't you? And just, you have to approach it as if it is real, because otherwise you go completely mad. So, okay, I mean, if it were the case that, just say in modern times, somebody's created a projection of the sky, then you've got to explain how, we've got pictures of the stars and star charts in very early civilizations that are clearly showing the same sky that we're seeing now. So are we saying that this holographic projection goes back, thousands of years? Who was doing it then and why? I'm just not sure. But that said, if you show me absolute evidence that looks convincing, I'll take a look at it. You know what I mean? So this is the difficult thing. We do live in a world where we're not told the truth. We do live in a world where there are many unanswered questions. And in the end, it will lead people to question everything. But at the end of the day, it comes down to a reasonable stack of evidence. And so at the moment, not quite sure about those areas, but I'm always fascinated in pursuing any strange idea, because people will say to me, yeah, but Andy, you're saying that some crop circles are not man-made. Some people see that as completely ridiculous, and yet I have seen evidence that makes me think they are not all man-made. So that's why I'm not going to be too quick to laugh at anybody else. But as yet, I remain to be convinced. And if you just take flat Earth, I mean, one of the questions that I still have not ever sort of heard explained by anybody is why anybody would need to fake the fact that it was spherical. Why not just say, yeah, hey, it's flat. There's an edge to it. Why wouldn't we all have just evolved knowing that and just being fine with that? Why would we have to be told we're on a sphere? What's the difference? So I'm not quite sure what the point of that sort of deception would be. And I've tried to sort of get to the bottom of this, but as yet, I haven't really heard a very convincing explanation. But yeah, it comes down to then that you are questioning everything about everything in reality, and that's fine. But it comes back to that thing, you've got to then just get on with it and just approach it as if it were real. I mean, it's like the theory about, the reptilian agenda. Are the people governing the world really reptilian aliens? Which people like David Icke have said, well, maybe, but you're still dealing with what you're seeing on the surface, and whether there's an alien agenda or whether they're just following a human agenda. In the end, I'm just not sure it makes that much difference. You can see good and bad being perpetrated, and you have to respond to it in one way or another, regardless of what the origin for this is. So I guess I feel the same way about this, really. But I mean, it's interesting. I mean, everything should be up for discussion. Why not? But in the end, you got to keep a sense of balance, I think.
Yeah, and even if it is ridiculous and it's harmless to think about that stuff, why would, like when you talk about censorship, David Icke got banned from speaking in an entire country. Australia wouldn't even let him. I don't think he got banned from going there or something like that. So it gets extreme when it comes to censorship. Censorship to me right now is a lot bigger than what I think people realize. I think that we're under this illusion that we're free, and we are not. I mean, it's really bad right now. You can see it all over the place when it comes to the internet, and now they can just ban you from coming to the country because they don't like what you're talking about,
No, you're right. It is a sad fact that we do not live in a free society. I know we like to pretend that we do, but we don't. And we do not have free speech. And the free speech that we had is certainly diminishing by the day now. I mean, there's no question about it. And I mean, one of the things that does concern me, though, is that although we were saying earlier we need to create new platforms for this and all that, we have seen links vanishing. We've seen videos from YouTube being taken out of search engines and all of this. If, though, the censorship goes too far, I could foresee a time when entire websites will not be hosted. And the big companies will say, sorry, I can't even host your website anymore. And then you are absolutely back to printing pamphlets, because where are you going to go? So unless a new internet that is completely free is created that isn't bound to the big companies and the governments. Sadly, at the moment, if this trajectory is not stopped, I could see that happening. I really hope that it doesn't. And that's why, again, we need to speak out now before it gets to that stage and say, no, that is not the world that we want to live in. And everybody will be affected by that. And everybody needs to speak out now and take notice of what's going on. Because you're right, a lot of people just haven't realized how insidious this has become. So we need to wake up now and address it now while we can. And you know, that's a message that I'm very much trying to put out at the moment. Not to create fear, because fear controls us, as we know, but just to get a reality check, and so that we can then see how we can respond to that in as positive a way as we can.
Absolutely. And yeah, you're right. If we don't, you know, it could very well be back to leaflets, pamphlets, and just ham radio, pirate radio, right? I hope that day never comes. We'll be right back. We're going into our last segment, so we'll get your final questions in from the chat as well as text in, and you can also call in as well. Be right back. Andy Tom.
Me old Chinas, I know it's an ad break, but before you lot shoot off and make yourself a cup of Rosie Lee or whatever else it is you're going to sling down your Gregory Peck, you need to listen to me babble. If, like me, you found your way to Light in the Void via a downloadable podcast, you might want to take a butcher's at the Fringe FM Wind and Kite. You won't Adam and Eve how many other shows there are or what they rabbit on about. Ancient history, conspiracy, the consciousness, the esoteric, the occult, metaphysics, parapolitical, ufology, technology and spirituality, to name but a few. They got featured hosts like Ryan Gable, Jeremy Scott, Alex Exum, Tim Doyle, Cortana and Gigi, Susanna Ross, the Reverend John Polk, Michael Deacon and J.D. Lewis. You might find yourself listening to the thoughts and theories of the author of The Fish you just finished reading. Or you could pick up the dog and bone, call in and tell everyone your own beliefs or experiences. So do me a favour, before you put on the Ansel or crack open a bottle of vino or roll a joint, go to the Fringe FM and see what you're missing.
Hi, this is Sammy. Join us in the Deep South as we're lighting the void with Joe Roop on the Fringe FM.
Is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
OMG! People are jumping on board to the Life Change Tea Regiment. Brew, steep, and drink for a gentle, taste great cleanse. It's changing how they feel. See what everybody's talking about. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Life Change Tea aids in digestive slowdown and helps people get moving down a healthy path. We won't make claims. We'll just let you decide. Experience is much better than a commercial anyway. If you want results, log on to getthetea.com and purchase your super strength cleansing tea. You won't be disappointed. And if you're looking for some mind-body suggestions, go to YouTube and punch in the search bar Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now. Put power into your health now. So, getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com for super strength tea. And YouTube, Health Matters Now. That's Health Matters Now for valuable suggestions. Getthetea.com. The tea that makes you go.
This is Elle. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing his journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much for a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now. The Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast where we tell real paranormal experiences of people from around the world. And we also conduct interviews with authors, investigators, psychics, and mediums. Real people, real stories, real fear. Thursdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern on The Fringe FM. See you then.
I like to listen to Lighting the Void because of the guests, the content, and the host, Joe Roop. He's smart, he's intelligent, and he seems to ask the questions that we all have on our mind. We're all searching for the truth, and Joe helps us get closer to it. I love this show. I love this show. I love this show. Lighting the Void.
To call Joe, pick up the phone, dial 1-800-588-0335, toll free from the United States or Canada.
Well, it has been definitely a fascinating and very informative discussion as we continue down the subject matter of cover-ups, conspiracies, and what's going on, what's being hidden from us. And tonight we were talking with Andy Thomas from truthagenda.org. That is truthagenda.org. That is the website, and you can see all of his books, all of his speeches, and all of his links and references are there on the website as well. And I have to ask you, do you think there's this whole thing about 2012, right, that I think you've touched on in one of your speeches, that I remember that I was at a car lot when that went down, and everybody thought the world was going to end, and this is a big thing in the conspiracy realm where there's this idea of doom and gloom, and it's not just talked about by people that are just paranoid. It's talked about by major movers. You know, when Art Bell was alive, he called it the quickening. Then there was the Y2K deal. There's been 2012, and then all of this sense of something that's coming to a head. Do you feel that there's something valid to that, or that that's just something that we're being controlled with, or that's in our minds?
I mean, in the Truth Agenda book, I write quite a lot about 2012. The original edition came out before 2012, and the updated editions kind of look back on it. Well, I do feel there was something genuine about the whole 2012 kind of going into the new era thing, because for anybody listening that isn't quite sure, embedded into various calendrical systems in ancient civilizations like the Maya people, you've got this cycle of time, which is 5,125 years. Now, that's a division of what's called the precession cycle, but it's called the Great Cycle certainly in the Mayan calendar. And the prediction was, or the belief was, that when the cycle ended and it began again, as it did in December 2012, hence the big fuss then, that it would herald a time of great upheaval, of change, some new big shift. And I think, although a lot of people interpreted that as the end of the world, there is one line in an ancient prophecy that mentions the end of the world. But I think if you take that as a metaphor for huge change rather than the destruction of a world, it was the end of a world, but the beginning of a new one, then I think there's something to it. And although I know a lot of people fixed a lot of things on things happening all on one day, and people gathered on mountainsides and all of this, I think there is something that has shifted. I don't think anybody could look at the world and honestly say that that things didn't change from 2012. There's been great upheaval around the world and a great rise in a new consciousness and new awareness of various things. And although I do think some people are trying to use that for their own agendas, yeah, I think something did occur. I never personally believed that everything would all suddenly go either bang or we would all suddenly reach enlightenment all on one day. I'd always felt that it would be kind of a more gradual thing. And my feeling is that something did occur then. I think there is something to that cycle. It's very possibly to do with wider solar cycles. I mean, it does look now, people like Michael Persinger and Rick Strassman, you know, they've looked at wider cycles of the sun. And also, you've got people like Dr. Paul Laviolette, that he's been examining ice core samples, and he has found that there are kind of dust levels, cosmic dust levels, that do seem to come through in a cycle, that do seem to tie in with these ancient cycles. And it may well be that we sort of see a different behavior of the sun every 5,000 years or so, maybe due to a wider cosmic cycle that does change us. The electromagnetic fields of the sun have been in great flux in the last few years. I mean, the sun has broken records over the last 35 years or so for all kinds of activity, and yet it's fallen very quiet again recently. And quite a lot of people think we're in the early stages of what's called a geomagnetic reversal, where the sun's magnetic field would flip. Well, that would have a huge effect on life on Earth. But some people think that things are already shifting. We know that our magnetic pole is already on the move. It's been moving around a lot in the last century. So that would affect us. Experiments with electromagnetic sort of devices on the brain, for instance, show that we can change dramatically when we have different electronic fields around us. So given that the sun is the biggest emitter of electromagnetic energy around us, we are very likely changing at the moment. The environment itself will be changing, whatever else we're doing to it. And there is a feeling, I think, that there might be a cycle that could explain why everything now does feel different. And I suspect this all does tie in with the whole 2012 thing. So, yeah, I think there was the doom-monger side of it, people that were almost, I think, wanting a kind of an end of the world because they want to change. But what we've got is, I think, a more subtle change, but a very real one, where we have to do the work. Because I think a lot of people were hoping for an instant ascension or enlightenment where we wouldn't have to do anything. We'd just be switched on to a higher level. Right. Well, I think we are being, but it's gradual, and we've got to do the work ourselves to make the most of it. That's what I feel about it. But yeah, I think there was something to it. And I think there is something to that. These times are ones of change. But I mean, there's always, if you go back through time, there's always been periods come up where everybody thought it was going to be the end of the world, or it would be the Last Judgment, or the New Jerusalem. In 1666 in Britain, a lot of people thought that would be the end of time. There are other periods you can find, I think each age has its own new eras, but it may be in this case there is a tangible cause, and certainly it's worth investigating the sun and the effect that it can have on life. And I suspect that we are in a symbiotic relationship with it, and I think strange things are going on with it. So yes, we must be changing. That would stand to reason to me.
Right. Yeah. And if you look into any of the ancient mysteries, especially Egyptian and the mystery schools in the West, the sun was very important. They worshiped the cycles of the sun, even monotheistically or polytheistically, however you want to look at that. It was a big deal since the beginning. And I do remember 2012, there was also, there was a planetary alignment of some type too, wasn't there, that only took place at a certain time, if I recall correctly. But I think that it was a shift in consciousness, or it was some type of shift inside of us, but that's what I hoped for. But what I'm seeing now is, something we talked about earlier in the show, and I'll get to your questions in the chat. I see them, by the way. Something we talked about earlier in the show where technology has kind of shifted, and it seems that as if it's taken over, like the agenda now is to become technologically superior but kind of not in the way that the Egyptians understood it, more in the way of microchips and artificial intelligence and transhumanism. Do you think that that agenda is truly here, that that's what's going on right now? Because there's a lot of talk about that.
Oh, I do. I think very clearly technology, it brings dreams and it brings nightmares. And for every good use of it, somebody will be there trying to use it to control us. And we can see that going on now. Yeah, I think AI, the rise in robotics, and as you say, transhumanism, where we effectively begin to become cybernetic, I think it's going to have a profound effect on the future. And we need to be very, very careful that the decisions that we make now are done with full consciousness of where we're going with this, because it could be so easily open to abuse. So, I think these are very big things. You often get leaps in evolution, but the digital evolution that we're now in, we've never been through anything like this before. The pre-digital generations are very different from the post-digital generations. We can see this, and the world has suddenly moved in a way that we could never have imagined, even in the last 50 years. And I mean, when I grew up, you could still find horse and carts going around the town that I lived in with the rag and bone man going around. I mean, and that you could have seen that for the last 2,000 years before that. Now we're seeing things that nobody has seen ever. And yet suddenly they've become a massive thing. Kids are switched onto tablets and laptops and phones now from virtually the day they're born. And we are changing what we are as human beings. And we need to, I think, be far more careful how we approach that, because it's happened so rapidly. We have shifted fundamentally who we are and what we are on this planet. And I'm not saying there's no gifts that come with it, because there are, but we also need to be very, very aware that we are changing what we are, and need to be super, super conscious of where we go with that. As ever, of course, a lot of people are not being, but, now's the time to look at it and look at the potential avenues that we're opening up, because what it is to be human has suddenly shifted in a very big way.
Yeah, Neuralink is the big one, right? Where they're talking about hooking us up to a search engine, so to speak, kind of like hooking us up to a database, where if you ask me a question, it's simply connected to my consciousness, and I can register something like Google or something of that matter and just get the answer. And I don't know, like Jared Lanier talks about, that we're ready for that. I'm not anti-technology, but are we ready as a species to take on something like that and be responsible for that type of power? Because right now we can't even agree on simple things like politics and such,
I mean, I think obviously there are massive, dangers to this, because, I mean, one of the issues, of course, is this is already true now of search engines. It's been shown that the human brain doesn't retain information in the same way anymore, because it doesn't need to. If you need to know something, you just look it up. Whereas before you might have to actually learn certain things, but now we don't need to hang on to them because we can go and find it. And I think, yes, when we're all just sort of sitting here and our brains are wired into whatever the internet will become, on one level, obviously that's an amazing thing. But on the other level, number one, will we ever truly be present in the physical world? Are we all going to be walking around like zombies because we're not really present? And number two, what happens when somebody controls that conduit? And that's what we've already got. And we're seeing, as we've been talking about in this presentation today, right? We're seeing that authorities are realizing that if they can control the one conduit of the internet, they control all human knowledge. And that's what they're trying to do now. And now they're editing that human knowledge to take away certain things. So the more we fall into that, right, the more that we're in danger of being controlled. But here's a third thing to think about. When we're all kind of wired into this collective global brain that's being created, not so much through psychic fields, although I think that's going on as well, but through technological fields, what happens when it all goes off one day? As it surely will, because you only need one massive solar flare from the sun, which we've already identified now is doing odd things, and all of our electricity could be shut down overnight. And I think the psychological shock, even today, of where we are now with our reliance on the internet, would have a profound effect on mankind. And they would be very difficult days to live through. And I don't think that we are fully prepared for that. So the more that we become completely enmeshed with technology, the more we are at risk of that technology just suddenly going down, and suddenly we're thrown back into a medieval world, and we won't be able to cope with it because we've lost our links to that way of living. So, there are profound issues and questions coming up that we all ought to be preparing ourselves for, just in case.
Absolutely. Yeah. That does worry me a little bit, that I haven't looked at that study, but I could see how the human mind would definitely adapt to that we no longer have to keep things learned, like read a book, store it, keep it, because we can just access things. That is a bit scary, right? Looks like we have 978 area code. You're on the air with Andy Thomas. Who are we speaking with?
Hey, how's it going? It's Derek, the Night Stalker in the Discord chat.
Hey, Derek, what's on your mind?
How's it going? Really great show, really fascinating. Sorry, I'm walking to go punch back in the punch clock, so I seem a little distracted. If you hear any background music. Quick question. What does your guest think about the idea that all the presidents are related and you have to be part of this special bloodline before you're even a nominee for president?
Good question.
The whole office of the presidency might be just one giant ritual in itself.
Very good question. So what do you think about the theory of the bloodlines? That's obviously been a major topic in the conspiracy realms when it comes to the controlling powers and presidents and such.
Sure. I mean, that goes down to, I think, the ancient myths and legends of the Anunnaki, in the Sumerian legends, and also even in the book of Genesis, chapter 6, you get the story of what are called the sons of God coming down and interbreeding with mankind and giving birth to this hybrid race known as the Nephilim. And it does say in the Bible, whether you believe in it or not, this is just simply what it says, that, the Nephilim remain the heroes of old, that they basically remain very influential in the world. So that has led a lot of people today to think, well, maybe that's a metaphor for describing a bloodline that got seeded long ago that might well be extraterrestrial. And that, of course, then gives rise to the reptilian agenda that we mentioned earlier, and David Icke's belief that, a lot of world leaders may carry this bloodline that actually ultimately goes back to something extraterrestrial, which, I mean, in his view, is a negative influence, and that therefore the world is secretly being governed essentially by an alien agenda. So, this stuff is kind of commonplace in the conspiracy world. It is certainly true that, I mean, throughout history, many world leaders have turned out to be related. Certainly old royal families were. I mean, across Europe, you'll find that there were very strong bloodlines. But even today, it is said that a majority of, say, American presidents have actually had strong genealogical links to the British royal family. So often you'll find that the British royal family often come up as a kind of a linchpin wherever you are in the world. A lot of leaders, it is said, are related, and it's said that many American presidents have had bloodline links with the royal family. So if you believe the royal family are one of the main carriers of the extraterrestrial bloodline, well then, yes, it's possible. It's not impossible that there could be something to that idea. Now, of course, other people laugh at this. Other people think it's a dangerous mask for other more sort of racist agendas and all of that. But who knows? It's not impossible that creatures from somewhere else interbred with us long ago. And people like Eric von Daniken, of course, I mean, he was saying that as early as the 1960s. So it's possible. Again, we don't know for sure, but we cannot rule it out.
Fantastic. Thank you for your question, Derek. I really appreciate you calling in. Or AKA Night Stalker from the Fringe FM chat room. You've made a lot of good points tonight, and I can definitely tell that you like to stick to what's true, the facts. You're a lot more real about it. So I don't know. We've just been going over these topics. We've only had a few guests about this, so it's really kind of refreshing to have somebody that's kind of searched all of these topics and knows quite a bit about it. Now, with that being said, I'm kind of going to get selfish here with my question. what are your views on how important the exploration of consciousness is when it comes to getting our power back away from all of the power control? Do you think it's necessary to be able to do these things when it comes to more meditation, more out-of-body experiences, even scientific research when it comes to the psychedelic realms, stuff like that? What are your thoughts on that?
I think it's very, very clear that we are more than just flesh and blood. I don't go down this reductionist view that, we are just simply, the consciousness is just a kind of a side effect of having a blob of a brain. It's very clear from all the experiments that I've read and the work of Rupert Sheldrake and people like this, that there is something which extends beyond our physicality. You've got out-of-body experiences where people have more or less proved that they have been, out of their body. They have witnessed things. They have seen things they couldn't possibly have seen from just sitting down in their normal state, as it were. You have, I think, clear evidence of experiments that collective consciousness works, that focused intention works. And, if you want to look at it from a religious point of view, many people have long believed, of course, that prayer works. Well, a lot of the new experiments with consciousness would actually seem to back that up, that if you focus your intent in the right way and with a very clear sort of outcome, it does seem to in some way affect the world around us. So therefore, yeah, absolutely, honing psychic skills, meditating, trying to calm your mind, trying to get yourself into a state whereby, you are going to be more sort of, more open to receiving this kind of sense of the collective. It's going to do some good. We're surrounded constantly by noise, by distraction, by the media, by technology. And sometimes I think it can drive us a little bit mad. And as I say, we've not really been used to this. We've only had this for the last century and a half or so, and we're still adapting as a species. And I think that all of this noise, all this distraction has perhaps managed to kind of take us out of some of the intuitive powers and gifts that we used to have, so that we almost don't tune into it anymore because there's so much other white noise going on around us. And I think it's a very good thing to try and tap back into that. I think ultimately, if you can get a majority of the world's population thinking in one direction, and let's hope that we get that in a positive direction, I think it does have an outcome. Certainly the collective consciousness experiments and, with things like the Global Consciousness Project, where these random number generator computers around the world can record what are clearly ripples in the collective consciousness field when big events happen and people all focus on the same thing at the same time, tell us, therefore, that there is an untapped gift there. It can also be a curse. We know from history when people are led all down one path for something negative, that can also have very dramatic effects. But if we could use that for a positive outcome, I think we would see a very, very different world. And I, do think it's possible that there are agendas to take us away from our spiritual selves, to kind of just focus us in on the flesh and the blood and the technology, because they are easy things to control and it cuts us off from our higher nature. And I think therefore we should be very careful not to be led too far down that avenue, and remember that we are flesh and blood. Yes, there is technology, but there are all these other faculties we have, and clearly psychic intuitions and gifts that suggest there's a whole other level of reality there that most of us are no longer allowed to see. And it's well worth tuning back into that and getting a more balanced existence if we can.
I totally agree. I think it will open us up to being able to debate better at the very least and be able to come together on certain things, as you say. You're currently working on a book about the Christmas, and now is that coming out? Is it out yet, about the history of it and what's been going on with that?
That book is just about to come out. I think it hits the shelves in October, and it's going to get a worldwide release, but it's out in the US and Britain and Australia, I think next month. Now, some people say, where does Christmas connect with all your other subjects? Well, actually, it does. because the deeper background to Christmas is absolutely fascinating. There are Egyptian connections. You have got, absolutely radical credentials in Christmas, because certain regimes around the world have tried to ban Christmas. Here in Britain, when we had the Republic under Oliver Cromwell in the 1600s and the Puritan movement, one of the first things they did was ban Christmas. And it's been a way of controlling us, because some people say, well, the festivals, aren't they just another distraction? Aren't they a way of kind of controlling us that way? Actually, it's the other way around. Christmas or some kind of winter solstice celebration has always naturally erupted in countries, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, where in the coldest, darkest time of the year, you need to celebrate light. It's almost a human necessity to have a festival where you celebrate the light and you move away from the darkness. And that, to me, is the biggest kind of message of what we call today Christmas, is that there is a lot of darkness in the world, and every now and then it's worth focusing in on the light. And Christmas has been a perfect opportunity to do that. And so in writing about the history of it, the full background to it, and looking at some of the more esoteric meanings to it, as well as all the paraphernalia and all the obvious things about the festivals, you find that across thousands of years we've been doing something like this at that time of the year because we need to. And it's interesting that's when regimes try to stop it, that you realize that they realize it has a power. And again, it taps back into collective consciousness. So, if anybody wants to look at the book about Christmas, I recommend it. If you want to come away from all the cynicism about modern commercialism and get back to what Christmas really is about, it helps tap back into that. And I think it certainly revalues it for people. And I hope people will enjoy realizing, okay, there's much more to Christmas than I ever thought.
So truthagenda.com is the website, as well as you have a Facebook page as well, correct?
Yes, you'll find me on Facebook as well, and there's a link to it from the Truth Agenda website, so you'll get to everything by going there.
Yeah, I totally thank you so much for coming on, and I totally agree with you about the Christmas thing. That is one of the biggest mysteries, and also one of the biggest revealing things about our history, who we are, what's going on, consciousness. It's huge. So I can't wait for that to come out. Real quick, before we get out of here, do you have any lectures or anything coming up too? Because I know you do lecture quite frequently.
I do, yes. If anybody wants to look at the dates coming up, if you go to the Truth Agenda website and look at upcoming talks, you'll see there's a big conference in Ireland, very good truth gathering held there, held at Waterford by a bunch of people who are doing brilliant work in trying to get truth stuff out there. So that's coming up in November. Got a talk in London. There's a few times that I will come to the States here and there. Nothing immediate, but keep an eye on that page, and anything that's coming up, you will find it there.
Thank you so much for coming on Lighting the Void. It's been a real treat talking to you, and I'm better educated about this. Actually, now I feel like I've got a good solid ground on the cover-ups and conspiracies and all of that after speaking with you tonight. And again, it's been a real pleasure having you on the show. Thank you, Andy.
Thank you very much.
All right, guys, don't forget tomorrow night, Friday the 13th, open lines. We're going to have an after party as well on KAST, K-A-S-T, and the website for Andy is truthagenda.org. Make sure you go check that out as well. And don't forget that this show was produced by The Fringe FM. Just don't copy without written permission. And the music was by Chronox, guitar by Bundy. Big shout out to Don, Pacho, Lady Ann, Eric Markham, Jeremy Scott, Dennis. Love you all in the Fringe FM chat. See you tomorrow night for Friday the 13th night. Good night.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.